You up? My phone buzzed at 6:47. You up? I was holding a pencil over a floor plan spread across my dining table, and I texted back, no. I was 27, a lesbian and an architect, and living alone in a rental apartment with a kitchen window that looked out over the parking lot. Chloe was 35, married with 2 kids, and lived 15 minutes away in a gray house in a subdivision where people power wash their driveways for fun. We met 2 years ago at a neighborhood barbecue. I don't remember who introduced us. I only remember spilling beer on my shoe and Chloe laughing before she said sorry. The 3 dots came up right away. I need a favor. Never mind, it's stupid. I rubbed the side of my hand over my mouth and looked at the microwave clock. 6:48. The contractor meeting was at 2. I had written it on the note stuck to my fridge in black marker like I didn't trust myself to remember my own life. What? Her answer took longer that time. Okay, so Sophia has this thing at school and she forgot black poster board and I told her I'd get it, and now I'm realizing I have absolutely no black poster board. I set the pencil down and leaned back until the chair gave a small crack under me. I'm not driving to Target at 8 a.m. It's not 8 yet. That's your takeaway? A picture came through. Sophia at the kitchen counter, half in frame, wearing her school polo and covering part of her face with one hand. She says her life is over. I smiled before I could stop myself. That was what Chloe did. She could reach into the middle of a workday before it had even started and change the air in it. Fine. But you owe me. A laughing face, a heart, then knew I could count on you. I looked at that last one longer than I needed to. Outside my kitchen window, the parking lot still looked half asleep. A silver SUV sat under a film of dew. Somebody in navy scrubs crossed between rows of cars with a paper cup in one hand. The asphalt held last night's cold. My apartment always felt most honest at that hour. The overhead light off. The Keurig breathing out stale heat on the counter. Drawings spread too wide for the table. No music, no TV, nothing trying to improve the place. I had a second cup of coffee already going cold near my elbow. One corner of the floor plan hung off the table and curled toward the floor. I flattened it with the side of my hand and stared at a kitchen elevation that had stopped meaning anything 10 minutes ago. I was supposed to finish a revision before the meeting with the contractor at 2. It wasn't hard. A window issue. A client who wanted more light without losing wall space. The kind of problem rich people paid other people to pretend was interesting. My mother told people I designed houses. I let her say it. Most days I fixed bad dimensions, resentful emails, and other people's confidence. At 7:15, I was in the Target parking lot with my hair still half damp from a shower I barely remembered taking. I parked crooked, fixed it, then gave up when the car next to me was even worse. The automatic doors opened on detergent, floor cleaner, and that general store smell that had nothing to do with any one product and everything to do with fluorescent lighting. I found the poster board aisle without thinking too hard about why I knew where it was. I held up 2 black sheets, took a picture, and sent it. This better save her life. Chloe answered before I reached checkout. You are literally our hero. People said that kind of thing all the time. Casual. Meaningless if you were normal. I paid, got back in the Civic, and left the receipt in the cup holder with the rest of my bad decisions. Chloe texted me her garage code while I was at the red light near the gas station. Doors unlocked if we miss each other. By the time I got there, the garage was open and the minivan was running. I could hear somebody inside the house saying, "No actual shoes," in Chloe's voice, and Sophia answering in the flat, offended tone teenagers use when they thought the whole world had been built to insult them personally. I knocked on the door frame with my knuckle and stepped into the mudroom. Chloe turned from the kitchen with one earring in and her phone tucked between shoulder and cheek. "Yep, hold on," she said into it. Then, to me, "You actually did it. You sound surprised." I say a lot of things before 8. She ended the call and took the poster board from my hand. She had on leggings, a sweatshirt that was too big through the shoulders, and the kind of rushed face that made her look younger and more tired at the same time. Her hair was clipped up badly. There was a pale streak near one sleeve that could have been flour or dry shampoo. Sophia came flying through the kitchen, grabbed the poster board, and stopped just long enough to say, "Thank you," in a voice that suggested she was preserving her real gratitude for a larger disaster. "You're welcome," I said. She was gone again. Chloe laughed under her breath and glanced toward the hallway. "That was huge, by the way. I expect full credit. She'll cite you in the acknowledgments." I looked toward the empty driveway through the open garage. "David already leave?" She nodded. 5:30 flight, St. Louis. I knew that already. She had texted me at 6:52 about hotel coffee and how he always packed too many chargers. I should not have known that already. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. I thought about the drawings waiting at home, the meeting at 2, the fact that the clock in my body worked differently around her. I can't. Right, she shifted the poster board to one arm. Work. Yeah. Something in her face closed, not much, just enough to register, then she smiled around it. Text me if your contractor says anything stupid. They only speak in that dialect. That's fair. I left smiling, which irritated me. Back at my apartment, I opened the file, fixed one dimension, corrected a cabinet note, sent an email to a client I did not like, and then my phone lit up again. A meme. A woman in office clothes smiling through obvious suffering, me pretending this is fine. I sent back a screenshot from my CAD program with 2 error windows stacked on top of each other. This is workplace violence. Chloe liked the message. Sophia says thank you again, but in a cool way so it doesn't count. I set the phone face down and tried to work. It did not help. That was the shape of most days with Chloe in them. Not constant texting. That would have been easier to dismiss. It came in small, stupid interruptions. A picture of something broken. A complaint about the school portal. A joke she did not need me to answer. By noon, it no longer felt like interruption, it felt built into the day. At 1:35, I was at the site in boots I hated and a hard hat that made me feel like a child at career day. The house was still framing, insulation, and loose talk. Plastic covered the future windows. Somebody had left an empty energy drink on top of a stack of drywall. Sawdust clung to the damp back of my neck. Rick, the contractor, was already annoyed before I got there, which at least made things efficient. I'm telling you, he said, standing in what would eventually be the breakfast area, if we leave this opening at that width, the trim's gonna look off. It matches the set. He blew air through his nose. I know what the set says. Then build the set. He looked at me over the tape measure like he was deciding whether I was young or just inconvenient. I'm saying once it's in, they're gonna hate it. I stepped closer and looked where he was pointing. The opening was tight. Of course it was tight. The clients wanted oversized glass and also storage, and also the illusion that wanting everything had no structural cost. If they hate it, I said, I'll revise it after they approve the change order. That's gonna be a fun call. Not for me. That got the smallest smile out of him, which was how most of my work relationships went. We disliked each other just enough to function. My phone buzzed in my back pocket while he was still talking. I ignored it until I got back to my car and shut the door. How bad was it? I started the engine but did not pull out. He and I fought over a window and stayed together for the kids. 3 laughing faces that came back. Sounds rough. Come over for dinner? No extra words. No justification. No, I know you're busy. That was one thing about Chloe. She invited people like refusal would not damage either of you, which only made saying no harder. I sat there with one hand on the steering wheel. The smart thing would have been going home, showering, finishing red lines, eating something plain standing over the sink, and having the kind of evening adults had when they understood boundaries. Instead, I typed, "What are you making?" "Spaghetti." "Fancy. Don't start. Come if you want. No pressure." That last part stayed on the screen. "I'll come by." She answered with one word. "Okay." It was annoying how much one word could settle and unsettle me at the same time. By the time I got to her house again, the sky had turned that stretched out blue-gray that made suburbs look staged. The porch light was on. The front window showed quick flashes from the TV in the living room. Sophia was on the couch in sweatpants, one knee up, phone in hand. Something on TikTok played too loud for 3 seconds, then cut off when she swiped to the next thing. "Hey," I said. She looked up and, "Hey." Not warm, not cold. 16. The house smelled like garlic, tomato sauce, and bread warming in the oven. There were shoes by the door, a backpack against the wall, and a jacket hanging off the stair rail instead of the closet 10 feet away. The place always looked lived in without looking careless. I had never learned how to do that. "Kitchen," Chloe called. She was at the stove, stirring sauce with one hand and pulling plates from a cabinet with the other. She had changed into jeans and a faded t-shirt. An apron hung crooked around her waist. "You made it. You sound surprised twice in one day." "I'm trying not to get attached to outcomes. You invited me." "That doesn't mean I trust you." I smiled despite myself. She pushed a loaf of bread toward me. "Can you put that in?" "Yes, chef." "I hate when you say that." "You really don't." She gave me a look over her shoulder and kept stirring. There was a half-finished worksheet on the counter, a college brochure shoved under a grocery flyer, mail in a loose stack, and one uncapped bottle of water sweating onto the laminate. I looked away from all of it before I could feel like I was studying the house. "Want wine?" Chloe asked. "I'm driving." "So, 1 glass. Water's good." She glanced at me. "A long day?" "Same day." She nodded and got a paper cup from the pantry. "There's beer too. David left some." The way she said his name did nothing special. That made it worse. I leaned against the counter while she drained the pasta. Steam rose into her face. She pushed a strand of hair away with the back of her wrist. Her forearm brushed mine when she turned. It was barely anything. My body still registered it like a mistake. Sophia came into the kitchen, stole a piece of bread before it was done, and ignored Chloe saying, "hot," because warnings at that age only counted if the fire was visible. "Your poster board saved the day," Chloe told me. Sophia took a bite. "I would have survived." Barely. Sophia looked at me. "Ms. Keller said my lettering was good." "There you go, future legend." She rolled her eyes, but there was pride underneath it. "It was just a poster." "Don't be humble now," Chloe said. "It doesn't suit you." Sophia smirked and left with the bread. I watched her go, and she got taller. "Don't remind me." "You're taking it badly?" "I liked it better when I knew what to buy her." She said it like a joke. Her hands slowed on the counter anyway. I reached for plates because it gave me something to do. We ate at the kitchen table. Sophia kept her phone face down beside her plate because Chloe had already fought one battle that day and was not in the mood for a second. They went back and forth about school, a history assignment, whether a B+ counted as basically an A, and somebody named Ava, who had apparently done something so dramatic it no longer needed detail. I mostly listened. That was one of the easier ways to be in their house. Listening gave me a role. It meant I did not have to decide what to do with my hands or my face, or the fact that Chloe set extra Parmesan near me without asking if I wanted it, because she already knew. At one point, she got up to grab napkins and rested a hand on my shoulder as she passed behind my chair. Thoughtless, brief, probably nothing. The fork felt wrong in my hand for the next few seconds anyway. David got home at 7:43. The front door opened, a duffel bag hit the floor. Cooler air moved through the entryway. "Hey," he called. "Flight got in early." Chloe looked up first. Something shifted in her face, not fear, not relief, more like a room-changing temperature. "You're home." That's usually what this looks like. He came into the kitchen in a quarter-zip, jeans, and the kind of travel exhaustion that made every middle-aged man look like a regional manager. He kissed Chloe on the cheek, looked at Sophia, asked if homework existed, got a noise in response that could have meant yes or absolutely not, then saw me. "Maya, hey." "Hey, you staying for dinner or did I miss the good part?" "There's more," Chloe said. David smiled. "Then I'm back just in time." He was easy to be around. That was part of it. He was not cruel. He was not sharp. He moved through his own house like a man who had earned the right to relax in it. He got a beer from the fridge, asked me about work, listened to half the answer, and sat down across from me like my presence at his table needed no explanation. That should have made everything simpler. It didn't. "You want another beer?" he asked. "I'm good." He nodded and took one himself. The rest of dinner moved the way dinners did in houses like theirs. Chloe got up before anybody asked for more bread. Sophia negotiated for the right to finish a show upstairs. David talked about St. Louis hotel coffee like it had personally betrayed him. Chloe rinsed plates as she went. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody touched the center of anything. I sat there with my hand around a paper cup of water, rubbing my thumb over the seam near the top. I watched David tear bread with his hands. I watched Chloe dry her fingers on the dish towel hanging from her apron. I watched Sophia lean back in her chair and pretend not to study any of us. And the thought arrived, plain as a bill in the mail. I do not belong here. Then Chloe looked at me and said, "You eat enough?" Not "do you want more," not "are you okay," just that. The question hit harder than it should have. "Yeah," I said, "I'm good." Later, when Sophia had gone upstairs and the dishwasher was running but not closed, I carried plates to the sink because leaving right after dinner would have felt abrupt. David moved to the living room and turned on a pregame show with the sound low. Chloe stood at the sink rinsing a bowl. The window above it looked out onto the dark backyard and the fence line beyond. Reflected in the glass, the kitchen folded back over itself. Her face, my shoulder, the warm square of light above us. "You didn't have to come," she said. "You invited me." "I know." Water ran over her fingers. She kept looking out the window. "I'm just saying, after work." "It's fine." She nodded once and kept rinsing. I stood closer than I needed to, holding a dry plate that no longer had any use. The damp hair at the back of her neck had started to curl from the steam. If I had stepped forward, I could have touched her. Not dramatically, not in any way that could survive daylight. Just one hand at her waist. My forehead against her shoulder for 1 second, enough to ruin the room. Instead, I set the plate down and moved back. David came into the kitchen for another beer while Chloe was reaching for a glass. He glanced at her, then at me, easy as ever. "She's been in a better mood lately," he said. Chloe let out a breath through her nose. "What is that supposed to mean?" He opened the fridge. "It means you've been happier." Then he looked at me. Since there was no suspicion in it. That was what made it land where it did. I smiled because my face needed something to do. Chloe shut off the faucet. David. What? He twisted the beer cap loose. It's good. She needs friends. Friends. A clean word. A safe one. The kind people offered when they wanted the room to stay intact. I said, no, happy to provide a community service. David laughed and went back to the living room. Chloe picked up the dish towel and dried the same clean glass twice. She was looking out the window again. There was nothing outside worth seeing. Neither of us said anything. I left 10 minutes later because staying longer would have meant choosing between two bad versions of myself. At the door, Chloe touched my arm. Quick, barely there. Thanks for coming. Yeah. She held the door open behind me. Drive safe. Sophia called goodnight from upstairs without coming down. David lifted a hand from the couch without taking his eyes off the TV. Outside, the air had cooled enough to wake me a little. My car sat under the streetlight at the curb. The windshield caught yellow light and held it. I got in and shut the door. Through the front window of the house, I could still see movement. David crossing the living room. Chloe passing behind him with a dish towel in one hand. Ordinary shapes moving through ordinary light. I drove home with both hands on the wheel. At 10 o'clock, I pulled into my apartment lot and left the engine running. The building looked exactly like it had that morning. Concrete stairs, metal railings. Somebody's wind chime shifting without conviction in the dark. My phone lit up in the cup holder. Thanks for coming. I read it once. Then again, I turned the phone over, picked it back up, looked at the message a third time, like it might tell me something new if I waited. I didn't answer. I didn't turn the engine off either. I just sat there with the car humming under me and the parking lot washed in weak yellow light. Like maybe if I stayed still long enough, I would become the kind of person who knew how to reply to a text like that without wanting more than the words gave. At 1:12 in the morning, I was still awake. The apartment had gone flat and quiet in the way it only did after midnight. The fridge clicked on, pipes made a brief sound in the wall. A car went through the lot outside, slow enough that its headlights slid across my ceiling before disappearing. I was on my back with my phone on my chest. Chloe's message was still there if I wanted it. Thanks for coming. I did not open that thread. Instead, I went somewhere worse. I opened photos, scrolled too far, kept going. Receipts, screenshots, a crooked picture of a stair detail, a blurry sunset I must have thought meant something. Then older still, until the images changed quality and the colors flattened out, until everybody looked younger in a way that made my stomach tighten before my mind caught up. I stopped at a picture from 2009. I did not tap it right away. Even in thumbnail size, I knew what it was. Two girls in school uniforms standing in front of a row of blue lockers. One of us was half turned toward the other. It should have been nothing. It wasn't. I pressed my thumb to the screen and opened it. Jasmine had her hair straightened that day. I remembered that before I remembered anything else. Not because it looked better, because she kept touching it in every class like she didn't trust it to stay that way. I was next to her, holding a math book against my hip, pretending not to smile and clearly failing. Somebody had taken the picture between second and third period. I couldn't remember who. That part was gone. The rest wasn't. I brought the phone closer to my face, then lowered it again without zooming in. My hand had already started to feel wrong, too tight around the edges, like I was gripping something heavier than a phone. I should have put it down. Instead, I lay there staring at 16-year-old proof that I had once stood next to someone without flinching from what it meant. Back then, everybody still texted like vowels cost money. My phone had a scratched silver edge and a battery that gave up by dinner if I used it too much. Facebook was where people went to say things they hoped one specific person would see. Nobody called it posting like that meant anything. You just put something up and waited. Jasmine's bedroom was the color of gum someone had tried to make respectable. Pale pink walls, white furniture, a vanity her mother probably called timeless. The whole room smelled like straightener heat and the lotion she used from Bath and Body Works, something clean and sweet that stayed on my hoodie after I left. I was 17 and sitting cross-legged on her floor while she leaned over her bed choosing earrings for no real reason. You think these are too much? She asked, holding up a pair of hoops. For what? She looked at me through the mirror. I don't know. Existing. I shrugged. They're earrings, Jasmine. That's not helpful. You ask fake questions. She dropped the hoops onto the comforter and smiled a little. You're mean. I still had my backpack on. One strap hooked over my shoulder like I might leave any second. I had been in her room before, but not like that, not with the door mostly shut and her parents downstairs and the TV on low somewhere in the house. Not with the air in the room feeling used up too fast. She sat on the bed and tucked one leg under herself. I think I like you, she said. I looked at her for a second too long. Not because I hadn't known, because hearing it out loud made the room smaller. I could feel my pulse in the inside of my wrist where it rested against the zipper of my backpack. She gave a short laugh, embarrassed already on, okay, wow, I could have done that better. Like? I meant it as a joke, mostly. She smiled then, really smiled. The nervous kind, but real. Yeah, like. I remember the sound the house made right then. The dryer downstairs, thumping once out of balance. A dog barking somewhere outside. Her mother moving dishes in the kitchen. Every ordinary thing stayed ordinary for one more second. Then Jasmine said quieter, don't tell anyone. And there it was, not even later, not after, right there in the middle of the first honest moment. I nodded anyway. I won't. She watched my face for a beat, like she was waiting for me to get offended or leave or ask for something she couldn't give. When I didn't, her shoulders dropped a little. Say something, she said. I set my backpack on the floor. I like you too. Her mouth opened like she was about to laugh again, but she didn't. She just stared at me with that startled look people get when the thing they wanted arrives, looking more fragile than they expected. Okay, she said. Okay, that's it? I'm trying not to throw up. She laughed then, loud enough that she covered her mouth right after. I laughed too, mostly because she was laughing and because the room had to do something with all that air. She moved first. Not much, just closer on the bed, one hand flattening against the blanket between us, then lifting again. I stood because staying on the floor suddenly felt stupid. My knees had gone stiff. I sat beside her and could feel the heat from the straightener still sitting on her vanity, a burnt metal smell mixed with lotion and laundry detergent. She looked at my mouth, then away. Have you ever… No. Okay. Have you? She shook her head. We sat there looking at each other long enough to make it worse. Then she kissed me. Too fast at first. More contact than kiss. Her nose bumped mine. One of her earrings caught in her hair, and she made a small sound into my mouth that almost made me laugh, except my whole body had gone still in a way I had never felt before. Not calm, not frozen, just fully there. When she pulled back, I could still feel where her lip had caught against mine. Sorry, she whispered. For what? That was bad. It really wasn't. It kind of was. I kissed her then, because I didn't know how else to answer. It still wasn't smooth. It still wasn't anything people in movies would have wanted. Her hand landed on my shoulder and stayed there too hard for a second. My fingers pressed into the mattress beside her thigh, instead of touching her, because I didn't know if I was allowed to. When we stopped, the room felt louder than before. She was smiling with her whole face. I looked away first, not because I regretted it, because I knew even then that good things could turn on you fast if you looked at them too directly. The picture on my phone blurred when my eyes lost focus. I blinked and the ceiling came back. My bedroom, dark dresser, streetlight cutting across the far wall. My own breathing, shallow and uneven for no good reason except memory, had no respect for time. I locked the phone, unlocked it again. There were only a few photos of Jasmine left. I had deleted some years ago, then stopped because the deleting started to feel more serious than the keeping. Like I was performing a breakup for an audience that no longer existed. The next image was worse, not because anything was happening in it, because nothing was. Jasmine in my passenger seat after school, chin tucked into her hoodie, one knee up. You could barely see her face. She had hated pictures when she was upset. I knew before I even opened it what day it had been. She had texted me that afternoon. Come over. Then right after, actually no, just come. By the time I got to her house, her car wasn't in the driveway because she couldn't drive yet and her mother was home early. I parked half a block down because that was what we did when we were pretending there was nothing to notice. Jasmine let me in through the side door near the laundry room. Her eyes were red, but not in a dramatic way. More like she'd been holding herself together too carefully. She had on the same hoodie from school and no makeup left except a dark line under one eye, where mascara had stayed longer than it should have. What happened? She shut the door behind me and leaned against it. Nothing. Okay. I mean, something, obviously. The house smelled like lemon cleaner. Too clean. The kind of clean people did when they needed control over one surface at least. Did your mom say something? Jasmine pressed her lips together. Jazz. She hated when I called her that in front of other people. Alone. She let me. Her eyes went to the stairs, then back to me. She saw my phone. I didn't say anything because there was nothing useful to say. She went through it while I was in the shower. The skin at the back of my neck pulled tight. What did she see? Jasmine gave a short, ugly laugh. What do you think? I thought of every text we'd sent in the last 2 months. Half jokes, late night nothing. The few lines that had crossed into truth because we were dumb enough to believe privacy was a real thing if a phone fit in your pocket. She read all of it? I don't know, enough. Where is she? At work, she left like 20 minutes ago. That almost made it worse. The absence of the actual fight. Just the air after it. Jasmine pushed off the door and crossed her arms over herself, then uncrossed them again right away like even that felt too obvious. She said we need to talk when Dad gets home. I looked at her face and saw it then. Not fear of getting grounded, not even fear of being yelled at. Something lower, colder. What did she say? Jasmine shook her head first. I waited. Finally, she said, she asked if this was a phase. Then she asked if you started it. The room held still around that. What did you say? That it doesn't matter. I let out a breath through my nose. Not relief, not anything good. Okay. She kept talking like I was sick and rude at the same time. I moved toward her without deciding to. Stopped close enough to touch her, then did. My hand on her sleeve, just above the wrist. She looked down at it like she'd forgotten I was allowed. We can figure it out, I said. I believed that while I was saying it. That was the humiliating part. She covered my hand with hers and held it there for a second. Her palm was cold. Then her phone rang upstairs. We both looked up. She didn't move at first. The ringing stopped, started again. That's her, Jasmine said. How do you know? She always calls twice. The second ring cut off when she picked up from the kitchen phone instead of her cell. I could hear the faint click of the line opening from the counter by the wall. Hi. Her mother's voice came through thin and sharp enough that I couldn't make out words. Only tone. Adult tone. Controlled and furious because control made it feel more moral. Jasmine stood with the receiver pressed too tight against her ear. No, she's not here, she said, and looked straight at me while she lied. A pause. Her face changed. Not all at once. It drained in pieces. Ohio, she said. Then nothing from Jasmine for several seconds. Her fingers tightened on the phone cord until the spiral stretched white between her hand and the base. No. Another pause. I said no. More voice from the other end. Longer this time. Jasmine's mouth pressed flat. Her eyes went glassy, but she kept blinking hard. Like tears were a practical problem she could outstubborn. I could hear one sentence then, clear enough through the cheap speaker and the blood in my own ears. We are sending you to your aunt's in Ohio. Jasmine turned away from me. No, you're not. That broke on the last word. I stood there in someone else's kitchen with my backpack still on one shoulder and my heartbeat climbing so hard it felt stupid, like I had done something physical to deserve it. There were magnets on the fridge from places their family had gone on vacation. A grocery list in her mother's handwriting. A bowl of fake lemons on the table. Jasmine listened, said nothing, then finally whispered, okay. She set the phone down too carefully. I waited for her to say something that would turn this into a thing people survived. A plan, a timeline, tomorrow, next week. Something with edges. Instead, she asked, can you go? I thought I heard her wrong. What? She wrapped both arms around herself and stared at the floor. Can you just go for now? Jasmine, please. I took one step toward her. No, talk to me. My dad's gonna be home soon. So? She looked up then, and the look on her face stopped me harder than if she'd yelled. Not anger, not shame exactly. Triage. Like she was standing in front of a fire and choosing which room to close first. You have to go, she said. I left because she asked me to. At 17, that felt different from being sent away. It wasn't. In the parking lot behind school the next morning, the sky was white and ugly, and the asphalt was still damp from earlier rain. Kids moved past us toward first period with coffee cups and backpacks and loud, stupid voices that belonged to people whose lives were still the right size. Jasmine had on sunglasses even though the sun wasn't out. You didn't text me back, I said. I know. Are you really going? She nodded. For how long? I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I wanted to grab the edge of her hoodie and make her stay still long enough to say one true thing without sliding away from it. Instead, I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets so hard my nails bit my palms. When? Friday. Friday? She looked over at the school building, not at me. My aunt already booked it. Booked it. Like this was a trip. Like somebody had won something. Tell them no. She actually laughed a little, and there was nothing funny in it. You think that works in my house? You can call me. She didn't answer. Jasmine. I know. No, say it. She swallowed. I'll call you. People were cutting between cars around us. A sophomore in a marching band hoodie nearly walked into the back of Jasmine's car without noticing either of us. Somewhere behind the gym, a whistle blew. I said, do you want me to come to the airport? That made her finally look at me. For 1 second, I thought she would say no, that she'd protect me from that much at least. Instead, she nodded once. Okay, so I went. Airports looked cleaner in memory than they did in real life. In real life, they were all polished floor and old carpet and people wearing their stress where everyone could see it. At 17, I'd never flown alone. The sliding doors, the rolling suitcases, The TV screens with white letters flipping destinations every few seconds. It all felt bigger than it should have, like places adults made rules you couldn't argue with. Jasmine's aunt was checking a bag at the counter. I never learned her name. She was one of those women who seemed built out of apology and inconvenience at the same time. She smiled at me too brightly and said, "You must be Maya," like I was a cousin from summer, not the reason Jasmine had been removed from one state to another. Jasmine stood next to her suitcase in jeans and a zip-up hoodie. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked younger like that, stripped of anything chosen. "We have like 10 minutes, she said. Her aunt glanced over from the counter. "Closer to 7. Jasmine didn't correct her. We stood by the windows facing the drop-off lane. Cars rolled past in slow bursts. A little kid somewhere behind us was crying hard enough to make himself cough. The airport air had that mix of burned coffee, cold air conditioning, and people who had been sitting in the same clothes too long. I said, "You can still not go." Jasmine nodded like I had said something nice but useless. "Don't do that," I said. "What?" "That thing where you act like I'm helping when I'm not." Her face tightened. "I don't know what you want me to say." The words came out low and flat, not mean, tired, which was worse. I looked at the boarding pass in her hand because looking at her was starting to feel like standing too close to an edge. "I want you to say this isn't it." She didn't answer. I made myself say it plainer. "I want you to say you'll call me and mean it." That landed, I could see it. Her fingers bent the corner of the boarding pass once, then again. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" Her mouth shook before any tears came. "I can't." I had thought about that sentence for years after and never found the part inside it that belonged to me. Back then, I asked the only thing I had. "Can't what?" She looked at me, then past me, then down at the floor. Her eyes were wet now, and she kept wiping one cheek with the heel of her hand like that could stop the rest. Her aunt touched her elbow. "Jasmine." Just that. Not cruel, not gentle either. Time was up, that was all. Jasmine took one step back. "I'm sorry," she said again. And that was when I knew sorry was all I was getting. I did not cry. That is the part people always think means I took it well. It didn't. I stood there with my jaw locked so hard it hurt behind my ears, and watched her walk towards security beside a woman I had never met. Once, just before the rope line curved out of sight, Jasmine turned around. She lifted her hand a little. Not a wave, not really. Then she went through the glass and the moving bodies and was gone. I remember going home more than I remember leaving the airport. My mother asked me something from the kitchen when I came in. I don't know what. I said I had homework and went upstairs with my shoes still on. My room looked exactly the same as it had that morning, which felt offensive. I turned on my computer because that was what there was to turn on. The screen buzzed to life. I clicked into a movie I had already seen before and watched it without following any of it. Halfway through, my mother called up the stairs. "You want something to eat?" "No," I said. That was all. No crying in the shower, no throwing things, no speech in the mirror where I admitted what had happened. Just a movie open on a bright screen and my hand still curved around a phone that did not ring. In my bed now at 27, I turned the picture of the lockers face down against the mattress with the heel of my palm, even though phones didn't work like that anymore. The room stayed dark. My chest had that old packed feeling, not sharp, not new, just crowded. As if every version of myself I had tried not to be was sitting up with me in the same bed. I thought about Chloe at my sink in the reflected dark of her kitchen window. The way she had looked at me before David came in. The way I had gone home and read her heart like it was a threat. "Don't," I told myself. Then again, quieter this time. "Don't." At some point I slept, not well, just enough to lose track of where the room ended. When my phone buzzed again, the window had already gone pale. I reached for it with a hand that still felt slow. "You okay?" You didn't reply. For a second, I only looked at her name. Then I typed, "Yeah, just tired." My thumb hovered over the screen before I hit send. Afterward, my hand would not stop shaking, though the message was gone, and there was nothing left to hold. The line. David stood at the bottom of the stairs with one hand on the railing and a yawn he was trying not to turn into a whole personality. "I'm gonna crash," he said. "You two okay?" Chloe was on one end of the couch with a glass of red wine in her hand. I was on the other with water I had not finished because I still had to drive home. The TV was off. The living room had gone soft around the edges, lit only by the lamp on the side table and the faint blue numbers on the cable box. "Yeah," Chloe said. I smiled up at him. "We're good. Don't stay up too late," he said. Which was the kind of thing people said in houses like this when what they meant was, I trust everybody in the room and expect nothing from any of it. Then he went upstairs. We heard him halfway up, then the creak near the landing, then nothing. Chloe let out a breath. Not dramatic, not big, just enough for me to know she had been holding it while he stood there. I kept looking at the dark TV. "That bad?" I asked. She swirled the wine once, stared at it like there might be better information at the bottom. "Oh, I waited. Then she gave the small one-shoulder shrug she used when she was about to tell the truth sideways. Sophia was impossible after dinner, she said. Then David asked what was wrong with her, like I was running customer service for the house. I smiled a little. Chloe did not. She told me I was being dramatic because I asked her to put her phone away for 10 minutes. She took a sip. And then he forgot. Forgot what? She looked over at me. My birthday. The word sat there for a second. I straightened without meaning to. What? She took another sip, smaller this time. Not today, last month. I brought it up because Sophia was talking about birthdays and he said, "Didn't we already do yours?" I stared at her. He meant dinner, she said. The dinner I booked. The dinner I reminded him about twice. The dinner where he spent half the meal answering emails. There was no bitterness in her voice. That was the part that made it land harder. She sounded tired enough to have worn the sharpness off it already. He's just busy, I said. The second it came out, I knew it was the wrong thing. Chloe looked down into her glass and smiled with no humor at all. That's what I keep telling myself. Outside, a car passed on the street in front of the house. Its headlights moved across the front window, then were gone. The lamp stayed where it was. The room stayed what it was. I took a drink of water just to do something with my hand. "I'm sorry," I said. "It's fine." It wasn't. We both knew that. She said it anyway because people who kept homes running said fine the way other people said hello. "He's not mean," she said after a minute. I looked at her. "He's not cruel. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't yell. He works. He shows up. He fixes things before I ask him twice." She turned the stem of the glass between her fingers. "He's fine." She stopped there. Then she laughed once under her breath and looked at me. That's the problem. I did not answer right away because I knew exactly what she meant, and I hated that I knew. There were marriages that ended in fire. Everybody understood those. You could point to the thing that ruined it. A person, a lie, a bruise, a hotel receipt. Chloe was talking about something quieter than that. Something that sat down in your house and stayed until one day there was no air left and nobody could prove why. She leaned back into the corner of the couch and tucked one leg under herself. Her sock brushed the cushion between us. I sound awful. No, you don't. I do a little. You really don't. She looked at me for a second, then away. Sometimes I think if he were worse, I'd know what to do. I felt that low in my stomach. I should have said something careful, something neutral, something that belonged to the version of me who came over for dinner and brought Sophia a poster board and drove home at a reasonable hour and understood where lines were. Instead, I said, "Oh, maybe that's why people stay." Chloe went still. Not all over, just in the face first, then the hand holding the glass. She did not say yes. She did not say no either. The house made a sound upstairs, some old settling noise or David rolling over in bed. We both listened to it without turning our heads. When the quiet came back, it felt narrower. Chloe set her wine on the side table and rubbed her thumb against the base of the glass like she was checking for a crack. "I almost texted you this morning," she said. "You did text me this morning. I mean after." My mouth went dry. I could still see her message from earlier. "You okay?" You didn't reply, and mine back. "Yeah, just tired." "What were you gonna say?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, come on." "It doesn't matter." That was one of her lies. Not a big one. Just the kind that asked not to be touched. I should have left it there. Instead, I said, "If it didn't matter, you wouldn't remember wanting to say it." She looked at me then in a way that made me wish I'd been less right. For a second, she said nothing. Then she reached for the bottle and poured herself what was left. It wasn't much. The sound of the wine hitting the glass was small and flat in the quiet room. "I was going to ask if you were mad at me," she said. I looked down at my water. "I'm not. I know that now. You knew that then too." "Did I?" I opened my mouth and closed it again. She leaned back, glass in hand, and turned her head toward the front window. The shade was down, but not perfectly. A strip of streetlight came through at the edge and laid itself across the rug. "I hate this time of night," she said. "Why?" "Because everything's done," she gave a small shrug. "The dishes are done, the lunches are packed, the texts stop, everybody goes to bed, and then it's just whatever's left." I didn't say anything. She looked over at me with that tired half smile that never meant she was fine. That sounded depressing. It sounded honest. That's worse. I laughed once softly. She smiled back, and for a second it felt like something had eased. Then it didn't. She shifted on the couch, turning a little toward me. There was still space between us, not much, enough that I could pretend it mattered. Her knee pressed into the cushion. Her hair had started slipping loose from behind one ear. I could smell the wine now when she breathed out, and under it, shampoo and the faint garlic from dinner that still clung to the house. You know what the worst part is? She asked. What? I keep making excuses for him before anybody asks. I looked at her. He's tired, he's stressed, work's been insane. He didn't mean it like that. Her voice stayed quiet. I can hear myself doing it while I'm doing it. The water in my glass was warm by then. I set it on the coffee table because my fingers were leaving damp marks on the side. You shouldn't have to do that, I said. Chloe's mouth tightened a little. Everybody does that. Not like that. She tilted her head on, you sound pretty sure. I almost said, I know what it looks like when somebody talks themselves into less. I did not say that. Instead, I said, you deserve better than somebody remembering your birthday because the calendar told him. That was too much. I knew it as soon as it was out. Not because it wasn't true, because truth sounded different after 10:30 at night in a dark living room when someone else's husband was asleep upstairs. Chloe stared at me. Her face did not change much. That made it worse. If she had looked shocked or embarrassed or amused, I would have had something to work with. Instead, she just looked at me like I had set something on the table between us. And we both had to decide whether to pick it up. Then she said very softly, you make it sound so simple. It's not. No. Her voice thinned on that one word. She took a breath, then let it go slowly. It's not. I could feel my own pulse in my throat now. Not fast exactly. Too heavy for that. Like each beat had to push through something on the way up. We sat there without speaking. Upstairs, a toilet flushed. A second later, pipes knocked once in the wall. Chloe smiled at that, automatic, distracted. Sorry, she said. Old house. I almost laughed. Instead, I watched her bend forward to set her glass down. The neckline of her sweater shifted at the shoulder. She straightened and did not move back all the way. Then, without looking at me first, she leaned her head against my shoulder. My whole body locked so cleanly it almost felt like calm. I did not turn toward her. I did not lean away either. The weight of her head was not much. That was the hardest part. If it had been more, if it had been dramatic or obvious, maybe my body would have known what to do with it. But it was just Chloe, tired, warm, real, resting there. Like she had done it before in some other life where this would have meant one thing and only one. I kept my hands where they were. On my own knees, fingers curled in, she let out a breath that moved through the fabric of my shirt. Neither of us spoke. The lamp on the side table buzzed faintly. Somewhere outside, a car door shut. The house stayed still around us. I could have stayed like that for an hour. I could have stood up that second and saved both of us. Instead, I sat there doing nothing, which was its own choice. After a while, Chloe lifted her head. Not far. Just enough. When I turned, our faces ended up close by accident or by the kind of accident that had been walking toward us for months. I could see the tired skin under her eyes, the tiny crease in her lipstick at the corner of her mouth, the way her pupils widened once when I looked back at her instead of away. She did not move. I forgot how to breathe quietly. Her voice, when it came, was almost too soft to hear. Do you ever want— No, she stopped. I stayed still. She looked at my mouth for 1 second, then back up. More than this, everything in me went blank and overfull at the same time. It was not a question I had prepared for, which should have been obvious, except some part of me had been preparing for it from the day she laughed at my shoe in a stranger's driveway and then kept texting me as if my name belonged in her day. I should have said something right away. Anything. What do you mean? Don't do this. Yes. No. You're married. I can't. Instead, I sat there with my heart hitting too hard and my hands still planted on my knees like they belonged to somebody who had never touched another person in her life. Chloe's face changed before I answered. She saw it. Whatever was on mine, fear, probably, want, history. Too much of all three. And because she was who she was, she moved first to protect the room. She laughed. Small, quick, wrong. I'm kidding, she said, already pulling back. Sorry, that was weird. Then she stood up. Just like that. She took her glass to the kitchen, even though it was empty. I heard the faucet turn on for no reason I could think of except noise gave people somewhere to hide. I stayed on the couch for a second that felt humiliatingly long. When I got up, my legs did not feel unreliable, exactly. Just badly attached. I picked up my keys from the coffee table and my half-finished water and followed the sound of running water into the kitchen. Chloe was standing at the sink with her back to me, rinsing a clean glass. I stopped in the doorway. You don't have to apologize, I said. She shut off the faucet but did not turn around. I know. That hurt more than if she had denied it. Chloe, it's late. The words were gentle, firm enough anyway. I stood there with my keys cutting into my palm. When she finally turned, her face was composed in that expensive suburban way that had nothing to do with money. Hair pushed back, mouth relaxed, eyes not giving away what they had just done. She dried the glass with a dish towel. I should get upstairs, she said. You should dry before you're too tired. There it was again. Tired. The word people reached for when the real one would have ruined too much. Yeah, I said. Neither of us moved for a second. Then she crossed the kitchen and touched my arm on the way past. Light, brief, enough to make my whole body answer before my mind could stop it. Good night, she said. Night. I left through the front door and closed it quietly behind me, like that still counted as being careful. The air outside was colder than I expected. My car was under the streetlight again. Everything in that neighborhood looked finished at night. Mulch where it was supposed to be. Porch lights on timers. Garbage bins tucked out of sight. Lives contained by siding and stone veneer in good school districts. I got in the Civic and sat there with both hands on the wheel. If she hadn't laughed, I might have kissed her. That was the first true thing. The second came right after. If she hadn't laughed, I might have let her. I drove home too aware of my own body. The place where her head had rested stayed warm long after it should have. My shirt felt wrong against my shoulder. My mouth felt dry no matter how many times I swallowed. At a red light, I realized I'd been gripping the wheel hard enough to ache across the base of my thumbs. At home, I went straight to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Light hit shelves, leftover takeout, eggs, half a lemon turning hard at the cut side, a bottle of seltzer. Nothing I wanted. Nothing that had anything to do with why I was standing there. I left it open for too long, then shut it. The apartment went quiet around me. I did not turn on the TV, I did not change clothes. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall until I got tired of staring and lay down without getting under the blanket. Jasmine came back then, not as a full memory this time. Just the shape of one. The airport. The sentence with no ending in it. I can't. I turned onto my side and pressed my face into the pillow. Was this the same thing? Not Chloe, she wasn't Jasmine. That wasn't what I meant. I meant me. The part of me that could live for months inside implication and call it restraint. The part that waited for other people to choose, then bled afterward like surprise had something to do with it. I got up again, drank water from the bathroom sink because the kitchen felt too bright now. Came back to bed, checked my phone, put it down, picked it up again. 2:17, 2:43, 3:03. At 3 in the morning, I opened Chloe's thread. The last thing there was, still mine from that morning. Yeah, just tired. I stared at it long enough to feel stupid. Then I typed, I'm not tired anymore. I looked at the sentence before sending it. It was a bad text. Too clear if she wanted clarity. Not clear enough if she wanted honesty. Exactly the kind of text you sent when you wanted the other person to decide what world you were both in. I sent it anyway. Her reply came back so fast it felt like she had been awake with the phone in her hand. Me neither. That was all. No mention of the couch. No mention of the question. No mention of anything either of us had done to the air in that room. I lay back on the bed with the phone on my chest and watched the dark above me. We were still inside it. That was the worst part. The avoidance. I woke up to 11 unread texts. For a second, I thought I was still half asleep and seeing the number wrong. Then I unlocked my phone and there they were, all from Chloe, stacked one after another in the pale light coming through my blinds. You okay? You still up? Ignore me. Actually, don't ignore me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked that. That came out wrong. Or maybe not wrong. Forget it. Are you awake? I'm sorry. The last one was timestamp 2:17. I stayed in bed looking at them until the screen dimmed and went black. Then I unlocked it again and typed the safest sentence I had. Yeah, just busy. I sent that to the first message and nothing to the rest. The apartment felt stale in the morning. I had slept in my clothes on top of the blanket. My neck hurt from the angle. My mouth tasted like I had been grinding my teeth all night. In the kitchen, the Keurig made its usual tired sound. I stood there waiting for coffee and checked my phone twice before the cup finished filling, like I expected the text to rearrange into something easier. Nothing new. That should have helped. It didn't. By 9:15, I was at the office, sitting at my desk under a wall of pinned drawings and marked up prints curling at the corners. We were a small firm, which meant everybody could hear everybody typing if the place went quiet enough. My desk was buried in trace paper, red pens, a dead succulent I kept meaning to throw away, and 3 coffee cups in different stages of abandonment. I opened a drawing set and stared at a bathroom detail long enough for it to stop being a drawing and turn back into lines. My phone buzzed. Okay, that was from Chloe. 5 minutes later, hope work's not awful. I looked at the message until the notification banner slid away, then put the phone face down under a stack of submittals like paper could cancel a person. At 10:03, she sent a meme, a raccoon hanging off the side of a trash can with me emotionally written across it. I replied with one thing, lol. Even as I sent it, I knew it was meaner than silence. That was the problem with avoidance. If you did it badly enough, it became its own kind of speech. Around noon, she texted, "How's your day?" I sent a thumbs up. Not words, just that. The bubble with the delivered checkmark sat there on my screen for a few seconds before another message came in. Don't do that. I locked the phone and shoved it into my bag. For the next 3 days, I kept performing normal wrong. If Chloe sent a picture of the dog next door digging up her flower bed, I liked it and nothing else. If she sent a joke, I answered too late. If she asked a real question, I stepped around it. She called twice the first day, once the second, 3 times the third. I watched the screen light up with her name from conference rooms, from my car at red lights, from the grocery store, produce section where I stood holding a bag of spinach I did not want and let her call go to voicemail. The voicemail icon sat on my screen for half an hour before I listened. I was in my car in the supermarket parking lot with the engine off and both bags on the passenger seat sweating cold through thin plastic. Shopping carts rattled somewhere behind me. A truck backed up 3 rows over with that shrill beeping sound that made every parking lot in America feel temporary and mildly hostile. I pressed play. Her voice came through low and careful, like she was trying not to scare anything off. "Hey, don't call me back if you're busy. I know you're busy. A pause. I could hear her breathing, then the rustle of movement, maybe her shifting the phone from one ear to the other. "I don't know what's happening, and I know you're going to say nothing, but it doesn't feel like nothing. So if I did something, just tell me, okay? Or don't tell me, I guess. Just..." Another pause. "Just don't be like this." The message ended in a small click. I stared through the windshield at the cart return in front of me. One cart was turned sideways and jammed into the others. Somebody had left a case of bottled water on the curb and forgotten it. The kind of detail I would have texted Chloe about 3 days earlier because she would have said something dry and exact and made the world feel briefly shared. I did not call her back. I put the phone in the cup holder and drove home with groceries I forgot to unload for 20 minutes because I sat in the parked car reading the same 2 texts over and over. "Are we okay?" "Yeah, why?" Her reply came right away. "You're being weird." I looked at the words. Then I sent another thumbs up. My screen lit up almost instantly. "Don't do that." I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove to work the next morning with it there. Like distance inside the car counted as a plan. By the afternoon of the 3rd day, I had built a version of the situation I could survive as long as nobody touched it. Chloe was fine. I was fine. Things were strange but not ruined. We were 2 adults having one bad week. People had bad weeks all the time. If I held still long enough, the whole thing might flatten back into something usable. Then David called. I almost let that go too. His name on my screen looked wrong. He never called me unless Chloe had told him to ask something practical. A school project. A recommendation for a contractor. Whether I wanted leftover lasagna, they could not finish. I watched it ring until the last second, then answered because not answering David felt like stepping into a level of trouble I was not ready to name. "Hey, I said. "Hey, sorry, you got a minute?" I was standing in the narrow hall outside the restroom at work with my back against the wall and a set of revised elevations rolled in one hand. Somebody laughed in the conference room behind me. The copier was running near reception. "Yeah." He let out a breath. "I don't know what happened between you 2. I closed my eyes, but Chloe's been crying. The rolled plans creased under my grip. "I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything," he said. She's a mess, Maya. I don't know what's going on, and she won't tell me much. She just keeps saying it's nothing, which means it's obviously not nothing." He paused. "Can you come over?" I said nothing. Not because I didn't have an answer, because I had too many. "Please," he said, quieter now. "I don't know what else to do." That should not have made me angry. It did anyway. Not at him. At the fact that he got to stand in his own confusion and call me for help with his wife, because whatever sat between Chloe and me still looked harmless from the outside. "I can come by later," I said. "Thanks." He sounded relieved in a way that made me feel worse. I hung up and stood there in the hallway until one of the interns came around the corner, saw my face, and said, "You good?" In the casual office tone people used when they hoped the answer would save them from further involvement. "Yeah," I said. Then I went back to my desk, pretended to work for another hour, and left early with my laptop still in my bag. By the time I pulled into Chloe's neighborhood, the sky had already started dimming at the edges. The houses all looked arranged for comfort. Porch lights on, minivans in driveways, a basketball hoop over one garage, recycling bins lined up neatly where they belonged. The kind of street where nobody ever seemed to slam a door. David's Accord was in the driveway. I sat in my car with the engine running for a full minute before I turned it off. When I rang the bell, footsteps came fast, then slowed near the door. Chloe opened it. Her eyes were red. Not dramatically, not movie red, just used. Like she had been rubbing at them for too long and then stopped because it wasn't helping. She didn't smile. I didn't either. David appeared behind her in the hallway and gave me a quick nod that was too grateful for what I had actually done. "Hey," he said, "thanks for coming." "Yeah." He looked from me to Chloe, then back again. Whatever he saw seemed to confirm something unhelpful. "I'm gonna take this upstairs," he said, lifting a laundry basket from the floor beside the stairs. "You two talk." Then he left us there with the front door still open behind me and the air from outside moving past my ankles. Chloe stepped back first. I came in, closed the door. The house smelled faintly like detergent and whatever candle she had burned earlier. Something clean, trying too hard to be calm. Neither of us moved toward the living room right away. Finally, Chloe said, "He called you?" "Yeah." She nodded once. "Of course he did." Her voice was flat from overuse. We went into the living room because that was where people in houses like this had hard conversations. The lamp on the side table was on, the TV was off. There was a folded throw blanket over the arm of the couch and one of Sophia's socks under the coffee table, like the family had continued existing in all the usual ways while I was busy ruining things. I stayed standing. Chloe didn't sit either. For a second, I thought she might say something soft. "Thanks for coming. Sorry about this." I didn't want him to call. Instead, she said, "What are you doing?" No hello, no warm-up, just that. I looked at the floor between us, then at her. "I don't know. That's not true." "It is." She folded her arms, then dropped them again right away, like she did not want the position to look defensive. "You were texting me at 3 in the morning." I said nothing. "You answered me." I kept looking at her. "And then you just..." She pressed her lips together and glanced toward the kitchen like she needed a second room to finish the sentence. "What is this?" I could feel my pulse in my jaw. "It's not anything." The second I said it, I heard how bad it was. Chloe gave one short laugh, not amused, barely even sound. "Okay, so I'm losing my mind." "That's not what I said." "No, you said worse." I rubbed my thumb over the edge of my keyring, metal against skin. A small, sharp feeling I could control. "You asked me something," I said. Chloe went quiet. The room did too. From upstairs came the muffled sound of a drawer closing. David, probably. Doing whatever decent husbands did when they thought they were giving people space. Chloe's voice dropped. "I know. You asked me something I can't answer." Her face changed at that. Not surprise. She had expected something like it. What hit her was the word "can't." "Then don't answer," she said. I looked at her. She took one step closer. "Just don't disappear." I wanted to tell her I hadn't disappeared. I was standing right there. I had come over. I had answered David's call. I had listened to her voicemail in a supermarket parking lot and nearly turned the car around twice and still ended up here. Instead, I said, "I'm not disappearing." "You are." The words landed clean. For the first time since I walked in, her voice shook a little. Not enough to lose control. Enough to show where it had cost her. "You think I don't notice?" she said. "You reply like you're talking to a coworker you don't like. You send me a thumbs up like I'm asking if the plumber confirmed a window. I call, you don't answer. I leave you a voicemail, you hear it, and then nothing." I stared at her. "You heard it, right?" I said nothing. She smiled once, tired and furious at the same time. "Right. I should have apologized then." A real apology. Not one of the clean little ones people used to end a scene. What came out instead was, "What did you want me to do?" The look she gave me after that would have been easier to live with if she had slapped me. "What did I want?" she repeated. "Yeah." She turned away and walked 2 steps toward the window, then back. Her hands opened and closed at her sides like she did not know where to put them. "I wanted you to act like I mattered enough to answer." That shut everything in me down for a second. Not because I didn't know it, because she had said it plainly. I looked toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward every other part of the house, except her. "That's not fair," I said. She laughed again, this time with actual disbelief in it. "No, Maya. What's not fair is asking me to pretend none of that happened and then punishing me because I noticed. I'm not punishing you." "Then what is this?" I didn't know how to answer without breaking the whole thing open. The true answer sat there between us, whole and obscene in its simplicity. "I'm avoiding you because if I see you too much, I'm going to tell you yes. Yes, I want more than this. Yes, I have for longer than either of us should admit. Yes, I know exactly how bad that is." Instead, I said, I'm trying not to make this worse." Chloe's face went still. "For who?" she asked. I had no good answer for that either. She looked at me for a long second, then nodded once like she had finally found the shape of the wall I kept pretending wasn't there. "Okay," she said. That word again. Except this time it meant the opposite of okay. I picked up my keys from where I had set them on the side table without remembering doing it. "I should go." Her mouth parted slightly, not in surprise, more in exhaustion. like she had expected that too. Of course you should. I hated her for making it sound deserved. I hated myself more for deserving it. I took 2 steps toward the front door. Behind me, she said my name. I stopped. When I turned back, she was closer. I had not heard her move. Maya. I waited. She reached for my hand. Not both of them. Not dramatically. Just one hand closing around my wrist, warm and firm enough to stop me. My whole body went still. I did not pull away. I did not turn back toward her either. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Her fingers around my wrist, my keys pressing into my palm, the front hall light catching the edge of the mirror by the stairs, the house holding its breath in all the usual suburban sounds, air vent, fridge hum, something shifting upstairs. Then Chloe let go. The absence of her hand felt louder than the touch had. I walked to the door and opened it. Cold air came in around my legs. At the threshold, I turned back and looked at her. She was standing in the middle of the living room with her arms at her sides, not trying to look composed anymore. Just tired. Just hurt. Real enough that the whole house around her looked staged. I'm not going anywhere, I said. It was true in the smallest, most useless way. Then I left anyway. I got home after dark and carried nothing inside except my keys and the version of myself I liked least. The apartment kitchen was too bright when I flipped the light on. I opened the fridge, took out a can of beer I had forgotten was there, and stood for a second with the cold aluminum against my palm. Then I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet under the sink. The first sip was bitter and flat. I drank it anyway. The kitchen tile held the day's cold through my jeans. Somewhere above me, a neighbor ran water long enough that I could hear the pipes work through the wall. My phone was on the floor beside my shoe, screen black, harmless looking. When it lit up, I let it go once. Then again, on the third buzz, I picked it up. I'm sorry. That was all Chloe sent. I opened the message box. Me too. Deleted it. I'm sorry too. Deleted that too. I set the phone down beside my leg and took another drink. The beer had already gone warmer than it should have. The screen went dark. I didn't send anything. Sophia. 4 days after the fight, Chloe was at the sink rinsing plates when Sophia finally said it. Mom. Chloe did not turn around. Yeah? You've been weird. The water kept running over the same plate. Pizza grease loosened off and pale streaks encircled the drain. Behind Chloe, the kitchen table was still a mess of paper plates, crushed red pepper packets, one half-empty Diet Coke, and the cardboard pizza box folded open, like the meal had given up halfway through being dinner. Sophia sat with her phone in her hand and her homework closed in front of her. Most nights, Chloe could tell when her daughter was only pretending not to look at her. Tonight, she didn't need the skill. What does that mean? Chloe asked. Sophia shrugged without lifting her eyes from the screen. It means you've been weird. Good talk. I'm serious. Chloe set the plate in the rack and reached for another. Her hands were cold from the water. The kitchen smelled like dish soap, garlic powder, and the crust nobody had finished. You're always serious when you want to be annoying. Sophia looked up then. Did you and Maya fight? That made Chloe turn. Not all the way at first. Just enough that Sophia saw the pause hit before Chloe covered it. No, Chloe said. What? Why? Sophia leaned back in the chair. She had David's tendency to look relaxed right when she was paying the closest attention. Because you're sad. I'm not sad. Sophia gave her a look that was too old for 16 and somehow still very much 16. You are, and you're bad at hiding it. Chloe reached for the dish towel hanging from the oven handle and dried her hands even though they were still wet enough to leave spots on the fabric. I'm fine, just tired, Sophia snorted. What? You said that last week. Chloe folded the towel once, then unfolded it again. Okay, then I'm tired for more than 1 week. It happens. Sophia put her phone face down on the table. That was how Chloe knew she was actually scared. Her daughter only gave a conversation both hands when it felt dangerous. Did you guys fight? She asked again. No. Then what happened? Nothing happened. Sophia looked at her long enough that Chloe wanted to move just to break it. That was the worst part about teenagers. Once they were old enough, they stopped needing proof. They just waited for adults to lie in complete sentences. Finally, Sophia said, You keep checking your phone. Chloe felt the words land in her body before they made sense in her head. I do not. You do. I have texts. People text. Yeah. Sophia glanced at the counter where Chloe's phone sat face down beside the fruit bowl. One person texts. Chloe crossed the kitchen and picked up the phone because leaving it there suddenly felt like a mistake. This is getting weird. You started weird. There was no edge in it. No teenage cruelty. That would have been easier. Sophia sounded tired. Smaller than she looked when she was being smart. Chloe unlocked the phone without thinking, saw there was still nothing new for Maya, then locked it again too fast. Sophia saw that too. Mom, I said I'm fine. No, you keep saying words. That's not the same thing. The room went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside and laid headlights across the window over the sink. David was in the living room with the game on low, though nobody was watching much of anything. The house still looked the same table, same backpacks by the mudroom, same mail on the counter. It offended Chloe a little, how ordinary everything stayed. Sophia pushed her chair back and stood. For a second, Chloe thought she was done, going upstairs, angry, teenage exit, conversation over. Instead, Sophia came around the table and stopped in front of her. Did something happen with Maya? Chloe looked at her daughter's face and saw the real question underneath it. Not gossip, not curiosity. How bad is this? How much should I worry? Are we still us? No, Chloe said. Sophia's mouth tightened. Okay. It was a terrible okay. A kid's okay. One that kept the argument from getting louder because volume would have made the fear more embarrassing. She picked up her phone and headed for the stairs. Sophia. Sophia turned halfway around. Chloe almost said, come here. Almost said nothing is changing. Almost said more than she could manage, honestly. What came out was, finish your homework. Sophia gave one short laugh that wasn't a laugh. Sure. Then she went upstairs. Chloe stood in the kitchen holding her phone and the damp dish towel and understood, more clearly than she had wanted to, that whatever sat between her and Maya had already made it into the house. David came in a few minutes later, carrying his beer and pausing when he saw the table still half dirty. You okay? Chloe kept wiping crumbs into one hand. Yep. David looked toward the stairs. Sophia stomped. She's 16. He said it in that mild way that meant he didn't buy the first answer, but hadn't decided yet whether to ask for a second. He set the beer on the counter and opened the pizza box. You want the last piece? No. He took it anyway and stood there eating it in 2 bites, like food could fill awkwardness if you moved fast enough. What? Chloe asked. He chewed, swallowed, wiped his hand on a napkin. Nothing. That's a lie. David looked at her then, really looked, and Chloe had the stupid thought that she must be much easier to read than she had been counting on. Okay, he said. You've been off. Chloe turned back to the sink. I'm tired. That answer again. She set a plate down harder than she meant to. Porcelain hit metal with a bright, small crack of sound. David didn't flinch. I'm not trying to start anything. Then don't. He nodded once, slow. Got it. That should have ended it. It didn't. Not really. It just pushed the conversation later, where harder things always went in marriages that still wanted to think well of themselves. That night they got ready for bed without talking much. Chloe washed her face at the sink while David sat on the edge of the mattress scrolling sports scores on his phone. The bedroom lamp made everything softer than it was. Their room always looked better at night. Quieter, more expensive, less like the place where they kept forgetting each other in practical ways. Chloe changed into an old t-shirt and folded her jeans over the chair instead of the hamper because she wasn't paying attention. David noticed. She could tell by the way his eyes flicked there, then away. When she got into bed, he set his phone on the nightstand, but didn't turn the lamp off yet. Is everything okay? He asked. She stared at the ceiling. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Is it me? That made her turn her head. David was sitting against the headboard, one knee up, hand resting flat on the blanket. He did not look angry. That would have simplified things. He looked tired, careful, like a man asking a question he had already edited down 3 times before saying it out loud. Did I do something? He asked. No. He nodded once, but not like he believed her. Okay. It's not you. Then what is it? Chloe opened her mouth and closed it again. She could not tell him the truth. Not the whole truth. Maybe not even the part of it that could pass as manageable in marriage language. I asked another woman a question I should not have asked. She did not answer it. Now I miss her in a way that is making me worse at being here. David watched her not speak. I'm not imagining this, am I? He asked. It was such a David sentence. No accusation in it. Just a wish for reality to stop moving under him. Chloe pulled the blanket higher over herself, though she wasn't cold. He looked down at his own hands. For a second, she thought he might push. Ask again. Ask better. Ask with the kind of force that would finally make her say something true and destructive. Instead, he reached over, switched off the lamp, and lay down on his side facing away from her. The room changed with the light gone. Usually one of them said goodnight. Not every night with feeling, not every night like it meant anything special, but enough that the silence had shape around it when it didn't happen. Neither of them said it. Chloe lay awake looking at the faint light under the bathroom door until it went out on the timer. At some point, she rolled toward David's back and almost touched his shoulder. Almost, then didn't. The next morning, Sophia came into the kitchen in a hoodie and socks, hair still flattened on one side from sleep. David was pouring coffee into a travel mug. Chloe was upstairs showering. The house carried sound badly in the morning. You could hear the pipes, cabinet doors, someone crossing the hall. It made privacy feel temporary. Sophia opened the fridge, stared inside too long, and took out yogurt she didn't want. David screwed the lid onto his mug. Bussin' 10? She nodded. He glanced toward the ceiling when he heard the shower turn off, then back at Sophia. You okay? Sophia peeled the foil off the yogurt and said, Dad? Yeah? Have you noticed Mom checks her phone like every 2 minutes? David didn't answer right away. He looked toward the stairs, then at Sophia. She stood there in her socks with a spoon in one hand, trying hard to sound casual and failing in the exact way all teenagers failed when something scared them enough to make them brave. Finally, David said, Eat something. It wasn't an answer. They both knew it. Sophia stared at him for 1 second longer, then looked down at the yogurt. Right. He picked up his keys from the counter and left for work a few minutes later. Not slammed out, not tense, just quieter than usual. Chloe drove Sophia to school because the bus had already come and gone by the time either of them noticed. The minivan smelled faintly like sunscreen, old fries, and the vanilla air freshener Chloe kept forgetting to replace. Sophia sat in the passenger seat with her backpack between her knees and her phone dark in her lap. Traffic near the school crawled the way it always did. Parents in SUVs pretending they were not cutting each other off. Kids spilling onto sidewalks with coffee and half-zipped jackets. Chloe kept both hands on the wheel. You missed the bus, Sophia said. I know. That's usually my job. Chloe let out something close to a laugh. It didn't last. They sat through one more red light. Then Sophia said, I'm not dumb. Chloe looked straight ahead. I never said you were. No, but you're doing that thing where adults act like if they don't explain something, kids won't notice it. Chloe tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Sophia, I'm serious. I know. Then stop answering me like I'm 10. The light changed. Chloe drove forward with the slow rush of other cars around them. When she spoke, her voice came out flatter than she wanted. Nothing is happening. Sophia turned toward the window and watched the school get closer. That's not true. Chloe felt the words in her chest. What do you think is happening? She asked. Sophia shrugged, but this time it looked forced, defensive. I don't know. It was a lie, not a full lie, just a scared one. You think Dad and I are getting divorced? Chloe asked. Sophia said nothing. That was answer enough. Chloe pulled up to the curb by the school entrance. Kids were getting dropped off in front of them, behind them, everywhere. Doors opening, backpacks sliding out, somebody laughing too loudly. A crossing guard, raising one hand like the entire world would listen because he said stop. Sophia kept staring forward. Hey, Chloe said. Her daughter turned. The fear in her face was so unguarded, Chloe almost looked away. We're fine, Chloe said. Sophia searched her face. Are you? It was such an unfair question. Because it was not really about the marriage, or not only that. Chloe managed, yes. Sophia nodded like she was accepting terms she did not trust. Then she grabbed her backpack, got out, and shut the door harder than she meant to. Chloe watched her walk toward the building without looking back. When she got home later that afternoon, the house was empty for 20 minutes. She stood in the kitchen, checking her phone without unlocking it, then unlocking it, then locking it again. Maya still had not answered the last message. The thread sat there with Chloe's apology at the bottom like a hand held out too long. She put the phone on the counter and went upstairs before she could send anything worse. In the bathroom, she shut the door, leaned both hands on the sink, and looked at herself in the mirror. Same face, same hair, same mouth that kept saying fine and tired, and it's nothing until those words had started sounding like props. A floorboard creaked outside in the hall, and she straightened too fast, like she had been caught doing something criminal instead of standing in her own bathroom. That evening, Sophia came home, did homework at the kitchen table, answered questions about school and clipped pieces, and went upstairs early. An hour later, Chloe passed the downstairs bathroom and heard nothing from inside. Not sniffing, not movement, just the kind of silence that made her stop. She knocked once. Soph? A beat. Yeah? You okay? Another pause, then, yeah. Chloe stood there with her hands still lifted near the door. Something in the answer pulled at her. Not the word. The wetness dragged underneath it. Do you need anything? No. Chloe waited. The house held still around her. Finally, she said, okay. She went back to the kitchen because there was nowhere else to put herself. A minute later, Sophia came out with her face washed and her expression fixed into something regular enough to pass downstairs. She walked by carrying a folded towel she had no reason to have brought in there in the first place. Chloe said nothing. So did Sophia. They both let the lie live. The next morning, David drove Sophia to school. She got out at the curb with one hand already on her backpack strap. Have a good day, he said. Yep. She shut the door and headed toward the building. David stayed where he was. The drop-off lane kept moving around him, horns brief and irritated, a parent in a Tahoe waving for him to go. He pulled forward, turned out of line, and parked in the lot across from the baseball field. For a while, he sat there with the engine running and his hands at 10 and 2 like he was still driving somewhere. Then he reached for his phone. He knew Chloe's passcode because she had never changed it. Birth year, simple, married long enough, trust. Or laziness. Those two things could look alike from the outside. He opened her messages, scrolled. He was not looking for proof at first. Not in the way people said that. He was looking for scale, tone, something he could label innocent and feel embarrassed for doubting. Instead, he found an older thread, Maya's name near the top, a line of blue and gray messages, jokes, grocery store complaints, photos of nothing, the shape of two people talking too often to call it casual. Then one text stopped him. I miss you, like physically hurts. David stared at it. Cars moved through the lot beyond the windshield. A kid in a marching band hoodie jogged across the crosswalk carrying a trumpet case. Somewhere behind him, a bus hissed at the curb. He locked the phone, set it down in the cup holder, sat there for another few seconds with both hands flat on the steering wheel. Then he drove home without saying anything. Jasmine. Jasmine was 10 minutes late. I knew that because I checked my phone 3 times without learning anything new from it. Outside the coffee shop window, the rain was light enough that nobody bothered with umbrellas unless they had just paid too much for one. Cars moved through it with their headlights on. The parking lot looked wet, not dramatic, just used. Across from me sat an empty chair, a paper napkin, and the coffee I had bought too early and stopped drinking too soon. When Jasmine finally came in, she pushed the door open with one shoulder and shook rain off the sleeve of her hoodie like she had been doing that exact motion her whole life. Sorry, she said. Liam wouldn't nap. I stood up too fast. You have a kid, I said, and that's still weird to hear. She laughed once and came in for the kind of hug people did after a long time apart when neither of them knew what the body was supposed to remember. Quick, light, enough to count. You look good, she said. So do you. It was what people said. She did look good, though. Not in the old way. Or not only that. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, no eyeliner, no effort that I could see, which probably meant just enough effort to get out the door with a 4-year-old in the house. Her face had changed in places I could not name right away. Less softness around the edges, more certainty around the mouth. She still looked like herself until she started speaking, and then the years showed. She dropped into the chair across from me and set her keys on the table. I almost texted to reschedule, she said. He's been on one all day. Who? She gave me a look. Right, I said, your child. That still sounds weird when you say it. It sounds weird in general. She smiled and reached for the coffee she had picked up on her way in. Her nails were shorter than they used to be. No rings except a thin wedding band that sat there so plainly it took me a second to stop looking at it. For a minute, we did the easy part. Work, weather, people from high school we had not spoken to in years, but still referred to by full names, like that made them safer to remember. Jasmine lived farther west now. Her husband worked in IT. Her son was 4 and apparently refused naps like it was a moral position. They had bought a house 2 years ago with a yard smaller than the listing photos had suggested. She said all of it in the tone adults use it when their lives had become full of practical nouns. I told her about the firm, the projects, the long drives to job sites, the clients with impossible taste and easy money. She nodded in the right places and smiled when she was supposed to. So did I. It would have been almost comforting if it hadn't felt so rehearsed. The coffee shop was the kind of local place that wanted badly to look accidental. Mismatched chairs, too many plants in the window, a chalkboard menu with handwriting designed to seem casual. Somebody behind us was steaming milk hard enough to rattle the metal counter. The whole room smelled like wet coats and espresso and floor cleaner that had mostly worn off. Jasmine glanced out the window once, then back at me. Your car still that Civic? Yeah, she laughed. Wow, yeah. I thought for sure you'd upgrade out of spite by now. Out of spite requires money. Fair? I looked out through the rain and found her SUV parked 3 spaces down from mine. Family size, neutral color. A child seat visible through the back window. That hit later than it should have. Not the fact that she had a child. I already knew that. It was the seat itself. Buckled in, permanent. Proof in plastic. Jasmine followed my eyes and said, "It's gross in there, by the way." I wasn't judging. You were a little... I was mostly processing. That I'm old? That you transport another person legally? She laughed again. Easier this time. For a second, I could almost believe that was all this meeting was supposed to be. Two people with history and decent manners, proving to themselves they could sit across from each other without breaking anything. Then Jasmine asked, "So, anyone?" I looked back at her. "Anyone what?" She lifted one shoulder. "I'm special." The question should not have caught me off guard. It did anyway. I picked up my cup, though there was almost nothing left in it. The coffee had gone lukewarm. "There's someone," I said. Jasmine waited. "But it's complicated." Her mouth moved before the rest of her face did. Not quite a smile. "It always was with you." I looked down at the table. There were coffee rings in the wood under the thin coat of sealant. Someone had scratched initials near the napkin holder. A sugar packet stuck slightly to the damp surface near my hand. "I don't mean that in a mean way," she said. "I know." She sat back in her chair and took a sip of her drink. "Married?" I let out air through my nose. "That obvious?" Jasmine did not answer right away. Rain ticked against the window. A barista called out a name nobody claimed. Somewhere near the register, a little kid asked for a cake pop in the same tone people use for emergency services. Finally, Jasmine said, "You look exactly the same as you did when you used to lie to me." That got my eyes back on her. "I didn't lie to you." "You absolutely did." "When?" "When you'd say things like, 'I'm fine,' and then go quiet for 3 days and call it being busy." I almost smiled. "Okay," I said. "That one's fair." She nodded. "I know." The thing about Jasmine was that she had always spoken lightly right up until the point she stopped. Then every word after that came out already weighed. I rubbed my thumb over the paper seam of the cup. "It's not simple." "No," she looked down at her wedding band for half a second, then up again. "It usually isn't when you want something that blows up the room." I did not know what to do with that. "You happy?" I asked. The question came out before I could make it better. Jasmine looked out at the rain again. "He's nice," she said. That was all. I waited. She kept looking out the window. "That's it. He's just nice." The sentence settled between us in a way I recognized too fast. I heard Chloe in it before Jasmine turned back toward me. Not the words, the shape. I said, "That sounds bad." "It's not bad." She smiled a little, tiredly. "See, that's the problem. Nothing's bad." I looked at her face then, really looked, and found the distance in it. Not from me. From herself, maybe. Or from the version of herself that used to believe wanting more counted as a plan. That scared me more than if she had looked miserable. Jasmine caught something on my face and gave the smallest shake of her head. Don't what? Make me into a cautionary tale because you don't want to deal with your own life." I leaned back. "That's not what I'm doing." "It kind of is." I should have pushed back. Said she was being unfair. Said I had not seen her in 10 years and was not arrogant enough to build a theory of her marriage in one coffee. What I actually did was look away. That was answer enough for her. She softened after that, not much, just enough. "I'm not unhappy every second," she said. "That's not what I mean." She pulled at the cardboard sleeve around her cup. "We have a kid, a house. He remembers dentist appointments. He does the Costco run without acting like he deserves a parade for it. Liam loves him. I don't wake up wanting to leave. That has to count for something." Does it? Jasmine looked at me with almost no expression. "That's a very you question." I let out a small laugh because she was right. She leaned forward and rested her forearms on the table. "What about her?" I didn't ask how she knew it was a her. Maybe because she always had. Maybe because some people only ever learned one version of your face deeply enough to keep recognizing it. I stopped. The wrong words came first. Nice, warm, funny, married, sad, mine in none of the ways that mattered. Jasmine waited me out. "She matters," I said. "That's rough." I looked at her. "I'm serious." She picked up her cup again, then set it back down without drinking. "That's worse than wanting somebody you can turn into a fantasy. If they actually matter, you can't even enjoy the drama of it. You just get scared." The back of my neck went tight. Jasmine saw it and gave one tired nod like we had arrived at the real conversation without permission. "You're still doing it, aren't you?" she asked. I said nothing. She did not rescue me from that. "Falling for someone you can't have," she said. "Calling it something else. Until it starts wrecking your life." The rain outside hadn't changed. Still light, still steady. The kind of weather people forgot as soon as it stopped. I stared at the window anyway. She asked me something, I said. "What?" I could still hear Chloe's voice from that night. Low. Almost gone by the time it reached me. "Do you ever want more than this?" I did not say it out loud. Jasmine watched my face and understood enough without the quote. "Oh," she said. That one syllable carried more accuracy than I wanted from her. "She asked," Jasmine said slowly, "or you heard it." I looked back at her. What does that mean? It means there's a difference between somebody asking you for a future and somebody breaking because they already know the answer. I didn't have one. Or I had one and hated it. Jasmine sat back and crossed one ankle over the other under the table. I did that to you. I stayed still. I kept handing you half-truths and calling them kindness. Her voice stayed level. That made it worse. I'm sorry. I had imagined apologies from her before, years ago, back when I still believed old pain might become useful if the right person named it correctly. This one landed with almost no heat, not because it meant nothing, because whatever it was for had already happened. That was a long time ago, I said. Jasmine smiled at that, not kindly. Yeah, she said, that's what people say when they still feel it. I looked down at my hands. The paper cup had gone soft near the bottom, where my fingers had been pressing too long. My shoulders hurt from holding too much in them. I became aware of my jaw the way you notice bad shoes only after being forced to stand still. Jasmine followed my eyes and said, quieter now. You never got over it. It was not a question. I should have defended myself. Said people moved on in strange ways. Said life went on whether you participated emotionally or not. Said none of this had anything to do with now. Instead, I said no. It felt less like confession than fatigue. The barista turned up the music. Somebody laughed too loudly near the back. A man in a baseball cap came in carrying rain on his jacket and stood stamping his shoes by the mat. Jasmine looked relieved when I said it. Not pleased, not flattered, just relieved to stop speaking around the truth. I'm not saying that because I want anything, she said. I know. I don't? That one got my head up. She shrugged and gave a small embarrassed smile. Not like that. I don't want you still stuck in a room I left 10 years ago. I could feel something in me shift then. Not heal. Nothing that useful. More like a lock giving way because the door had already been pushed on too long. I looked out at her SUV again. Through the wet window, I could see the outline of the child seat and back. One dinosaur sticker on the rear glass, a crumpled blanket on the second row. Evidence of a life that required lunch, patience, naps, and remembering where tiny shoes had ended up. When I looked back at Jasmine, I saw the gap clearly for the first time. Not between us now. Between her and the girl I had kept. I had loved somebody who no longer existed and maybe had not existed quite the way I remembered even then. That should have hurt more cleanly than it did. Instead, it made the whole thing feel ordinary in the saddest possible way. Jasmine checked the time on her phone and sighed. I have to go before he melts down in the back seat for no reason that still somehow feels personal. I nodded. We both stood. The chair legs scraped against the floor. My body felt slow getting upright, like I had been sitting much longer than an hour. At the door, she stopped and pulled me into another quick hug. Rain smell from her hoodie, coffee on her breath. The cold damp of outside already clinging to the fabric at her shoulder. When she stepped back, she kept one hand on my arm for a second. Don't lose another 10 years, she said. Then she let go and walked out into the rain. I stood just inside the door and watched her cross the lot. She moved differently now. Not older exactly, more committed to gravity. She unlocked the SUV, opened the back door, and leaned in. A small boy's voice carried out, high and outraged, about something invisible to me. Jasmine said something I couldn't hear, and then lifted him up. One hand under him, one arm steady at his back. The whole motion practiced and unshowy. She buckled him into the seat, closed the door with her hip, got behind the wheel. I had never seen her do anything maternal before, not even pretend. The sight of it did something strange to the old version of her I had kept in storage, without admitting I was doing it. It didn't break the memory. It made it feel narrow. I went back to my table after she drove off and sat down with my cold cup still there. Rain kept ticking against the window. A server wiped down the table beside mine. Someone came in asking if the blueberry muffin was fresh. The coffee machine hissed again. Everything in the room went on being itself. I took out my phone. Chloe's thread was where I had left it. Her last text still sat at the bottom. I'm sorry. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel my own hesitation now, the way I used to feel hunger if I waited too long to eat. Not dramatic, just physical. A thin, sick pull under the ribs. The body getting tired of being managed by fear and calling it caution. Can we talk? Not over text. The message looked exposed sitting there in the box. I sent it before I could improve it into something useless. Chloe replied 30 seconds later. I've been waiting for you to say that. I stared at the screen. Tomorrow? Her answer came back almost right away. My place, 7. David will be out. I read that once. Then again, the coffee in front of me had gone fully cold. I took a sip anyway and made a face at it alone. Outside, the rain had already started easing off. I know. David got home early. Chloe heard the garage door before she looked at the clock. 6:23. Too early for traffic to have been kind. Too early for anything she had told herself about timing to still matter. She was on the couch with her phone on her thigh, the thread with Maya still open. Tomorrow, 7. She had just sent it. The front door open, then shut. Keys on the console table, shoes on hardwood. The ordinary sounds of a man coming home to his own house. She did not lock the phone fast enough. David came into the living room carrying his coat over one arm. He looked tired, but not work tired. Not the loose, distracted kind. More contained than that. He set the coat over the back of the chair, glanced once at the TV, which was off, then at Chloe. Something in his face made her stand before she knew she was doing it. "Hey," she said. "Hey." He didn't ask about dinner, didn't ask where Sophia was, didn't look at the kitchen or the mail or anything else that usually let them warm themselves into being married for another evening. He sat down in the chair across from the couch. Then he said, "We need to talk." The sentence landed in the room without force. That was what made it worse. If he had sounded angry, Chloe would have had somewhere to go with her body. Defend, explain, push back. Instead, she stayed standing with her phone in one hand and felt the blood leave her face in one clean drop. Sophia was upstairs. Chloe could hear a faint thud from her room, maybe a drawer. Maybe music turned low enough to pretend she wasn't in there at all. David rested one forearm on his knee. There was a bottle of whiskey on the coffee table from Christmas, open now, with 2 fingers missing from the neck. A short glass sat beside it with a little amber left at the bottom. He looked at Chloe's phone, then back at her. "I read your messages," he said with Maya. Everything in Chloe went still. Not because she had never imagined this, because she had, over and over. In the shower, driving, lying awake with David's breathing beside her. But in every version, he was louder, sharper, easier to resist. "What messages?" she asked anyway. David gave one small nod like he had expected that much from her. "Come on." She lowered herself back onto the couch because her knees had started feeling unreliable. The phone stayed in her hand, warm from her grip. Useless now. David leaned back in the chair and picked up the glass, then set it down again without drinking. "How long?" he asked. Chloe looked at the edge of the rug instead of him. "I don't know." "Try." Her mouth had gone dry. 2 years, maybe. David let out a slow breath through his nose. "But it's not what you think," she said. That got his eyes on her in a way that made her wish he had just kept staring at the floor. "What do I think?" She had no answer ready for that. The phrase had come out the way old phrases did when people were cornered. Not because they were true, because they had been said by so many other mouths before. "We haven't done anything," she said. David looked away then, toward the dark TV maybe, or the lamp, or nowhere. When he spoke again, his voice stayed level. "You cry because of her." Chloe said nothing. "You smile because of her." The skin at the back of her neck pulled tight. "You live because of her." He finally looked at her again. "That's not nothing." The room held. Upstairs, the house made one of its normal sounds. A floorboard, air moving through the vent, Sophia crossing to the bathroom. Chloe could hear all of it too clearly. The whole house seemed built out of details that wanted to survive this conversation unchanged. "It wasn't supposed to," she started, then stopped. David waited. "It just..." She looked down at the phone in her hand as if it belonged to somebody simpler. "It happened." He gave a short laugh that had no humor in it. That's what people say when they don't want to admit they made choices. The words hit because they were fair. Chloe put the phone face down beside her on the couch cushion. David rubbed a hand over his mouth. "Did you ever think I'd find out?" "Yes," she said. That answer surprised both of them. He stared at her for a second. Chloe looked away. "Yes," she said again, quieter now. "I think I knew, I just..." Her throat closed around the rest of it. David finished for her. Kept not dealing with it. She nodded once. He reached for the whiskey then and poured a little more. Not much. Enough to have something to do with his hand. The bottle touched the rim of the glass on the way back down. A small, clean sound. "I'm not angry," he said. And he wasn't. Chloe could hear that. The absence of heat in him was worse than anger would have been. Anger would have let her believe this was about one night, one line crossed, one fixable betrayal. David sounded tired enough to have already lived with the truth for a while. "I know," she said. "That doesn't make this better." "No." He took a drink and held it in his mouth for a second before swallowing. "I kept trying to figure out if I missed a moment, some point where this turned into something I should have seen." He looked down at the glass. "But I think the harder part is that maybe there wasn't one." Chloe felt tears rise too quickly and hated them for the timing. She pressed the heel of her hand to one eye, hard enough to hurt. David watched her without moving. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. He nodded again once. "I know." That was the problem with David. He always knew the least useful mercies. "I believe you," he said. "I don't think you set out to wreck anything." Chloe laughed once through the tears. It came out broken and embarrassed. "That's generous." "It's true." "True." She wiped under one eye and looked down at her fingers. No mascara there. She had stopped wearing much of it years ago because afternoons were too long and children touched your face with sticky hands. David leaned forward and set the glass down carefully. "Do you love her?" he asked. The question should have shocked her. It didn't. It landed like something the room had been waiting to hear spoken in full. Chloe didn't answer. She looked at the coffee table, the bottle, the remote, a folded receipt half tucked under a magazine. Domestic things arranged around a question that did not belong among them and somehow had been living there anyway. Chloe. She closed her eyes. If she said no, he would hear the lie. If she said yes, the house would change shape around them permanently. And the worst part, the part that made the tears come harder, was that she still did not know what the truth meant in practice. Love was not a plan, love was not a custody schedule or a mortgage, or Sophia's face in the passenger seat asking if her parents were still them. "I don't know," she said. David sat back. For the first time that night, something in him visibly gave way. Not dramatically. Just enough for her to see where he had still been holding on to the idea that she would rescue the marriage by knowing herself clearly. He nodded once, slow. "Okay." Chloe covered her mouth with her hand. "It's not like that," she said, even as she heard how meaningless that was. David's eyes went to her hand, then back to her face. "What is it like?" She shook her head. No, really." His voice stayed low. "Tell me what I'm supposed to call it." Tears slipped free then. Not loud crying, nothing cinematic. Just the body losing its grip in the places she could no longer control. "I don't know," she said it again. "I don't know." David stood up. The motion was so ordinary it took a second to register. He did not slam the glass down, did not point, did not curse. He simply stood like a person whose back had started hurting from sitting too long in one bad chair. Chloe looked up at him from the couch, her face wet, and felt more ashamed than she would have if he had yelled. "I'm not going to tell you what to do," he said. His voice had gone even quieter. "But I can't live like this." The words entered the room and stayed there. He picked up his glass, thought better of it, set it back down, and walked toward the stairs. At the first step, he stopped without turning around. "I'm leaving for the hotel tomorrow anyway," he said. "For the conference." Chloe stared at his back. "So whatever you're going to decide," he said, "decide it without pretending this is still invisible." Then he went upstairs. A few seconds later, the bedroom door shut. Not hard. That was what made Chloe start crying for real. She bent forward with both elbows on her knees and covered her face, the sound of it small enough that if Sophia had music on upstairs, she might not hear a thing. The house did not help her. The lamp stayed on. The whiskey sat there. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. A minivan drove past outside. After a while, the tears stopped because bodies had limits even when feelings did not. Chloe sat up and wiped her face with both palms. Her skin felt raw under her eyes. Her phone was still beside her on the couch where she had left it. She picked it up, opened Maya's thread. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. "I love you." She stared at the words. Deleted them. "I need you." Deleted that too. Neither one was fair, not tonight, not with David upstairs, not sleeping, and Sophia down the hall doing algebra, or pretending to. The screen stayed open in her hand. Finally, she typed, "Tomorrow, don't be late." She read it once. It looked colder than she felt and needier than she wanted. She sent it anyway. Then she sat there with the phone resting face up on her thigh and listened to the house above and around her. No footsteps. No door opening. No second conversation arriving to save either of them from the first. Upstairs, David lay on their bed on top of the blanket with one arm over his eyes. He was not trying to sleep yet. Sleep would have implied a future version of the night. This was still the same hour, only broken into pieces. He could hear the faint murmur of the TV from a neighbor's house through the wall, the pipes settling, a car passing at the end of the street. Below him, Chloe moved once across the living room, then not again for a long time. He kept his hand over his eyes because the darkness under it felt chosen. Downstairs, Chloe turned off the lamp and stayed on the couch anyway. The living room went dim. Streetlight came through the crack in the curtains and laid a pale strip over the rug. She could have gone upstairs, brushed her teeth, put on the face people wore when they were trying to act like tomorrow was still in their control. Instead, she stayed where she was with her socked feet tucked under her and her phone in her hand, and her body too aware of itself to rest. She did not text Maya again. She did not call. She did not go upstairs. In the room above her, David did not sleep. Neither did she. By morning, the marriage would still be standing in all the ways other people meant by standing. That was the worst part. Tomorrow. At 7:03, I knocked on Chloe's door. She opened it right away, like she had been standing there with her hand already on the lock. For a second, neither of us said anything. The porch light flattened her face and made her look more tired than she had in any text, any memory, any version I'd been carrying around all week. Her hair was pulled back badly, no makeup, oversized sweater, bare feet. Then she said, "David knows." I stood there with one hand still low at my side, keys in it. "Okay," I said. That was all. "No, what happened?" "No, are you serious?" No sharp inhale, no movie shock. The sentence landed where it had probably been heading for months, maybe longer. Chloe stepped back and let me in. The house was too quiet, not empty quiet, family quiet. The kind where the room still held the shape of people who had just left them. A backpack by the stairs, one sneaker turned sideways by the door, a cereal bowl in the sink. The TV off, though somebody had used the remote recently enough that it was sitting crooked on the coffee table instead of in its usual place. "David took Sophia to dinner," Chloe said. I nodded. She closed the door and stood there, with her hand still on it for a second after the latch caught. Like the extra pressure might keep the whole night from moving. I followed her into the living room. Neither of us sat down. The couch was right there. The chair, the rug, every piece of furniture in its normal place, waiting for normal people to use it normally. Chloe stayed near the arm of the couch. I stood by the coffee table, still holding my keys. Streetlight came in through the front window and thin bars through the blinds. Outside, cars passed every so often. The neighborhood still looked intact from the street. That was what made being inside it feel worse. Chloe folded her arms, then dropped them again. He read the messages, and she said, "Okay." She gave a short laugh that didn't mean anything good. "You keep saying okay. I don't know what else to say." "That makes two of us." The words hung there. I set my keys on the coffee table so I would stop cutting my palm open with them. Chloe watched me do it like she had never seen me put anything down before. "When?" I asked. "Last night." I looked at her. "He asked me how long," she said. "He asked if I love you." Her face tightened in one small place near her mouth. I said I didn't know. I stared at her for a second. Then I said, "Do you?" Chloe looked away immediately, toward the dark window. "That's not the point." "It is the point." She shook her head. "No, the point is David knows. Sophia's scared. I'm standing in my own house, feeling like everything in it belongs to somebody else. I wanted to say something useful, something that would make the room easier to stand in. What came out was, "That's not an answer." Chloe's face changed, not angry, just thinner, like one more layer had been taken off and the rest of her hadn't agreed to it. "No," she said, "it isn't." We stayed standing too long. That was one of the strange things about bad conversations. The body kept waiting for the normal version to begin. Sit down, offer water, ask how the drive was. But none of those doors opened. You just stood there in a familiar room until your legs started to feel stupid. Chloe went first. She slid down to the floor with her back against the couch, knees up, one arm wrapped across them. Not graceful, not dramatic, just tired enough to stop pretending furniture solved anything. I sat down too, a little to her left. Close enough that our shoulders almost touched if either of us stopped paying attention. Far enough that the distance had to be maintained on purpose. For a while, we looked straight ahead. The room smelled faintly like detergent, and whatever candle Chloe had lit earlier, and then blown out before it reached the end. "He said I cry because of you," Chloe said. I kept my eyes on the wall across from us. "Okay," I said again, softer this time. "And smile because of you," she swallowed. "And live because of you." I felt that in my hands before I felt it anywhere else. A small shaking that started in the fingers and moved up only when I tried to stop it. Chloe noticed. She glanced down and, "Your hand." I tucked it under my other arm. "It's fine." A real smile almost came and then didn't. "That's my line." "I know." We were quiet again. Then Chloe leaned her head back against the couch and shut her eyes. "I hate this." I said, "Me too." "That's not even true." I turned toward her. "What isn't?" "You don't hate this." Her eyes were still closed. "You hate this part." She was right, which annoyed me. I hated the pain, the impossible logistics. David upstairs in memory. Sophia in the car asking questions neither of us could answer cleanly. I hated the fact that love, if that was what this was, had arrived shaped like damage. But I did not hate her on the floor beside me. I did not hate the fact that in the middle of everything collapsing, I still wanted to reach for her. "Okay," I said, "I hate the way this is happening." Chloe opened her eyes and looked at me then. Really looked. Not around me, not through me, at me. "What do you want to do?" I asked. She let out air through her nose and laughed once, quietly. "You think I know?" "No." "Then why ask?" "Because somebody has to." She looked down at her own hands. Her nails were bare. One cuticle on her thumb was torn and red, probably from her picking at it without noticing. "What do you want?" she asked. I looked at the floor. The rug had one darker thread near the edge that I had noticed months ago, and then forgotten until now. The kind of domestic detail that only existed because I had spent too much time in this room trying not to name what I was doing there. I said it anyway. I want you. The sentence sat in the air for one full second before either of us moved. Then I kept going because stopping there would have been cruel. But I don't want to be the reason you lose your family. Chloe's face folded in on itself a little at that. Not because I had said something wrong, because I had said the exact thing both of us had been standing around for too long. You think that helps? She asked. No. Then why say it? Because it's true. She looked away. Outside, a car door shut somewhere up the block. Someone laughed faintly. A dog barked once and then gave up on the effort. Chloe rubbed both hands over her face and stayed there for a second, palms pressed to her eyes. When she dropped them, her cheeks were wet and she didn't seem to know when that had happened. I didn't say anything. That was the first difference between this and every other almost in my life. With Jasmine, I had spent years turning silence into a shelter. With Chloe, silence sat there exposed. It didn't protect anyone. It just kept the damage from being properly named. What if I don't know how to choose? Chloe said. I heard the child in the question before the woman. What if there isn't a clean choice? What if every version is bad? I stared at the floor and let the answer come up honest. There isn't. She nodded once, like that hurt and helped in equal measure. I keep thinking, if I just get through this week, she said, or if David calms down, or if Sophia stops looking at me like that, then maybe I'll be able to think. She shook her head. But that's not real. That's just me trying to buy time from something that doesn't take payments. I looked at her then. There it was again, the thing that kept undoing me. She could say one dry, exhausted sentence and make me feel more understood than I had any right to. I said, time's not going to fix it. I know. Then what are we doing? Chloe turned toward me fully for the first time that night. I don't know, she said. I just know I can't lose you. The words went through me too fast. I should have been relieved, happy, vindicated in some ugly private way. Instead, all I could think was that everything she loved was arranged in this house. Her daughter's room upstairs, David's shoes by the door, the grocery list on the fridge, the blanket over the back of the couch, a life that had shape and history and damage already built into it. I said, you already have, David. The second it was out, I knew it sounded smaller than what I meant. Chloe did too. I know, she said. Not defensive, not offended, just tired. Her hand was resting on the floor between us. Open, not reaching exactly, just there. I looked at it, then at her face, then back at the hand. When I finally put my hand over hers, Chloe closed her eyes. That was all. No dramatic pull toward each other, no desperate kissing because the room had gotten too full of things people were scared to say. Just her hand and mine, both of us sitting on the floor of her living room, while the streetlight moved a little through the blinds as cars passed outside. Her fingers were colder than I expected. Mine weren't steady. We stayed like that long enough for my legs to start going numb. Chloe said almost to herself, he asked if I love you. I looked at our hands. And you said you didn't know. Yes. Was that true? Chloe opened her eyes and stared at the opposite wall. At the time, maybe. And now, she gave the smallest shake of her head. Why are you doing this? Because I'm tired. She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Of me? No. Then what? I looked up at her. Of pretending the important part is everything around us. For a second, her mouth opened, like she was going to say something immediately. Didn't come. When it did, it was quieter than before. You think I'm pretending? I think you're scared. Of course I'm scared. So am I. Then stop acting like I'm the only one hiding. That hit clean. I leaned back against the couch and looked at the ceiling for a second, because looking directly at her had started feeling too close to the edge of something irreversible. I'm here, I said. That's not the same thing. No. She took her hand out from under mine. Not abruptly, not gently either. Just because she needed it back. I need time, she said. There it was. The phrase people used when they wanted reality to slow down out of politeness. I nodded anyway. Neither of us called it what it was. Time was a hallway, not a decision. We both knew that. Still, I said, okay. The word sounded dead the second it left me. Chloe looked at me like she wanted to apologize for the shape of everything and had run out of sentences that could do the job. I mean it, she said. I'm not asking because I want to keep you hanging on. She stopped and looked down at her own knees. I can't think with everyone watching me. I thought of David not yelling. Sophia staring too hard at the kitchen table. A whole house full of decent people injured by a thing they had not named until it was too late. I know, I said. We sat there a little longer, both of us too tired to invent a better ending for the evening. At some point, Chloe stood up and I stood with her. My legs had gone stiff from the floor. The room looked different from standing, though nothing in it had changed. Lamp on, rug centered. family photos on the shelf above the TV, a school portrait of Sophia from middle school beside a beach picture taken 3 summers ago, everybody smiling the correct amount. Chloe moved toward me before I could decide whether I was going to say goodnight like a normal person. When she put her arms around me, I let my body go into it with a relief that felt almost humiliating. My forehead touched her shoulder. Her sweater was soft and smelled faintly like laundry detergent, and her skin. One of her hands pressed between my shoulder blades and stayed there. Her heart was beating hard enough that I could feel it through both of us. Neither of us moved to end it. When Chloe finally spoke, her mouth was near my temple. "I'm sorry." I stayed where I was. "For what?" I asked. She did not answer. Maybe for David. Maybe for Sophia. Maybe for the last 2 years. Maybe for tonight. Maybe for the fact that whatever she felt was real and still not enough to build a life on without breaking 3 others. I didn't ask again. After a while, she stepped back. Her face was still wet in places, though the crying had stopped. Mine was dry. That felt unfair in a way I couldn't explain even to myself. I picked up my keys from the coffee table. At the door, Chloe followed me, but didn't touch me again. The porch light had come on fully by then. The street beyond it was dark except for pools of yellow under the lamps. "Drive safe," she said. The sentence almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded, and yeah. I got in the car and shut the door. I didn't start the engine right away. Through the front window, I could still see her standing in the entryway, one hand on the door frame, not waving. Then she disappeared back into the house. I started the car and drove. No music, no radio, just the engine and the sound of tires over dry pavement for the first few streets. Then, a few minutes later, rain began. Light at first, a faint tapping at the windshield, easy enough to ignore if I had been anyone else. At a red light, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. I looked. "I love you." Just that. 3 words. No punctuation, no softness added around them, no apology attached, no explanation. Somehow that made them feel both truer and less survivable. The light turned green. A car behind me honked once. I drove on. At the next light, I looked again. The message was still there. Of course it was. That was the thing about texts. They stayed clean on the screen no matter what they did to the body reading them. I watched the words for 5 full seconds. Then I set the phone face down in the passenger seat and kept driving through the rain without answering. The name. 4 days after the text, I parked in front of Chloe's house at 8 o'clock and killed the engine. I sat there for a second with both hands on the wheel. The house looked the same as always. Porch light on. Kitchen light too. One upstairs window lit behind drawn blinds. David's car in the driveway. The basketball hoop over the garage. A plastic bag caught in the hedge near the mailbox and moving just enough in the wind to keep not going anywhere. I had not told her I was coming. My phone was in the cup holder, dark and quiet. No new messages, none from her, none from anybody I wanted. I got out without my coat. The cold hit right away, but not in a useful way. It didn't clear anything up. It just made my skin register itself harder. When I knocked, Chloe opened the door fast enough that she had either been near it already or had not been doing anything that required both hands. She was in pajama pants and a long gray sleep shirt with a cardigan over it. Her hair was pulled back badly. Her face looked tired in a way makeup never helped anyway. "Maya," she said, "what are you doing here?" I need to say something. Her eyes moved over my face once, quick and searching, then past me to the street. "David's upstairs." "I know." She held the door a little wider. "Okay." I came in. The house was quiet in the way houses got when people were still awake, but trying not to be noticed. A lamp was on in the living room. The TV was dark. There was a textbook open on the dining table and a glass with a little milk left in it. The dishwasher hummed low from the kitchen. Chloe closed the door behind me. For a second, we stood in the entryway looking at each other with too much history in the room and nowhere clean to put it. Then she said, "Back patio." I nodded. We went through the kitchen without touching anything. Chloe unlocked the slider and let me out first. The cold outside felt sharper in the backyard, the kind that sat in the concrete and moved up through your shoes. The patio light over the door was off. Only the kitchen behind us and the yellow spill from the fence-line lamps gave the yard any shape. I stopped near the table. Chloe stayed by the door. "You should have worn a coat," she said. "I'm fine." She gave me a look and disappeared inside for 2 seconds. When she came back, she had one of David's zip-up hoodies in her hand. "Here." I shook my head. "Maya." I said I'm fine. The hoodie stayed between us for another second. Then she let her arm drop and laid it over the back of a patio chair. We could hear the vent unit kick on somewhere near the side of the house. Farther off, a dog barked once and then stopped. A car passed at the end of the block and laid brief light over the fence slats before moving on. Chloe crossed her arms. What did you need to say? My mouth had gone dry on the drive over, and it hadn't improved in the backyard. I looked at her, then at the table, then back at her again, because if I didn't say it while looking at her, I would hate myself later in a way that lasted years. I love you, I said. Nothing in the yard moved. I kept going because stopping there would have made it sound smaller than it was. Not you matter to me. Not you're my person. Not we're close. My hands had started shaking, so I shoved them into my pockets and felt the cold lining against my knuckles. I love you. Like, I want to wake up next to you. I want to tell you things first. I want your stupid grocery store texts and your bad memes and your voice in the kitchen when I'm in another room. Chloe did not interrupt. I could hear her breathing. That was all. I know this is a terrible time to say it, I said. I know there probably isn't a non-terrible time, but I'm done calling it other things just because I'm scared of what happens if I say the actual word. Chloe's face changed slowly while I was talking. Not shock, not relief, more like pain arriving in the places she had tried to keep clear. When I stopped, she didn't speak right away. Her eyes dropped once to the patio, then came back up. Finally, she said very quietly, I know. The cold reached my hands after that. Then say it back. The words came out flatter than I meant them to. Not a demand exactly. More like the body asking for proof before it gave out. Chloe looked at me and didn't answer. I waited. A beat too long, then another. Chloe. She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them again, they were wet. But the crying had not started yet. I can't. I felt the sentence in my stomach first. A drop. Clean, familiar. Why not? She let out a breath that did nothing for either of us. Because if I say it, I have to do something about it. I stared at her. And I don't know if I can. That hurt in a way almost felt childish. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. Too well. Because even then, some stupid part of me had still shown up hoping clarity itself might force the world into decency. I said, so that's it. Chloe shook her head immediately. No. No? That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? She looked toward the back door as if the kitchen window behind it might contain a better version of her. I mean, I can't stand here and say it like it doesn't break everything. It already breaks everything. I know. No, I don't think you do. Her face pulled tight at that, and I hated myself even while I said it, because I knew what I was really asking for was not honesty. It was rescue. I wanted her to look at me and choose me in full sentences so I could stop being the only person standing under the weight of what this was. Chloe rubbed both hands up over her arms like she had gotten cold all at once. Don't do that, she said. Do what? Make me sound like I'm pretending this is small. I laughed once, quietly and with no humor in it. You just told me you can't say it. I told you I can't say it and then stand here like there isn't a house behind me. The words landed harder than they should have because they were plain. There was a house behind her. David upstairs. Sophia somewhere down the hall or asleep or not asleep. 15 years. Utility bills, winter coats in the closet, a family calendar on the fridge, a whole life full of ordinary objects that had somehow turned into moral pressure. I looked past her for 1 second at the dark glass of the slider, then back at her. Do you love me? The question came out quieter than everything else. Chloe did not move. A tear slipped down one side of her face and she didn't wipe it away. That was not an answer. It was also the clearest answer I had gotten. Still, I waited. Her mouth parted, closed, opened again. Then she said, Maya. Not yes, not no, just my name with too much inside it and nothing usable. I nodded once. Okay. The word tasted dead. I turned away before my body could do anything humiliating in front of her. I got as far as 1 step toward the gate before Chloe grabbed my hand. Not my wrist this time, my hand. Warm, tight. Maya. I stopped. The backyard was suddenly too quiet. I could hear the vent, distant traffic, my own breathing, shallow enough to annoy me. Look at me, she said. I didn't. Not because I was trying to punish her. Because I knew my face would do something I wouldn't be able to call back if I turned around too soon. I'm sorry, she said. I laughed again once under my breath. For what? She didn't answer. I waited. Nothing. I could feel the pulse in her hand where it held mine. I said, me too. That made her loosen her grip, though she didn't let go immediately. When she finally did, the cold came back into my fingers so fast it felt staged. I turned then. She was crying now, but quietly. No sound, no collapse. Just tears and a face she was no longer trying to manage for anybody. For a second, I thought she might step toward me. She didn't. That was probably the kindest thing she could have done. I nodded once like there had been an actual conclusion and walked to the door. Inside, the kitchen looked exactly like it had a few minutes earlier. Milk glass, homework, dishwasher humming, the whole machine of family life still running on its settings. Chloe opened the slider behind me. Neither of us said goodnight. At the front door, I put my hand on the knob and heard movement upstairs. Floorboards. Slow ordinary. Somebody going from one room to another in a house that still belonged to them. That was when it hit hardest. Not in the backyard. Not when she said, "I can't." Right there, with David overhead, and the hallway dim, and the family photos on the wall beside me, all smiling with their teeth in summer light from years I had not been part of. I opened the door and left. I did not cry until I was driving. At first, it was just harder to see. Not because of the road, because my eyes kept filling faster than blinking could fix. I wiped once with the heel of my hand at a red light and told myself to get home first. That lasted less than 3 minutes. By the next stop sign, my breathing had gone wrong. I pulled over on a side street lined with dark houses and bare trees and sat there with the hazards off and the engine running and both hands over my face. No one knocked on the window. No one saw. A porch light clicked on 2 houses down and then off again. Somewhere farther away, a garage door started opening. I cried hard enough that my ribs hurt. Not gracefully. Not in a way that would have looked meaningful from outside of it. Just the body finally doing what it had been denied in real time. My nose running, my chest jerking, my mouth open because there was too much air and not enough of it at once. It passed the way those things do. Without dignity, without lesson, without leaving anything behind except soreness and embarrassment and a strange calm underneath both. I found napkins in the glove compartment and wiped my face. Sat there a little longer. Then I breathed until the next breath came easier than the one before it. Started driving again and went home. My apartment was cold when I walked in. I turned on the bedroom lamp, changed clothes without turning on any other light, and got into bed facing the wall. The sheets were cool. The room smelled faintly like detergent and the rain that had come in with me from outside. My phone stayed dark on the nightstand long enough for me to notice it. Then it didn't. No new message. I picked it up anyway. Opened Chloe's thread. Nothing. I typed before I could stop myself. I meant what I said, but I won't say it again. I stared at it once. Sent it. A minute later, the reply came. "I know, thank you." That was all. No heart, no apology. No, I know what you mean. No, I wish things were different. Just thank you. I turned the phone face down, slid it back onto the nightstand, and rolled toward the wall again. At some point after that, I slept. Enough. A year later, the invitation came in the mail on a Thursday. It was thicker than a bill and lighter than anything important was supposed to feel. I stood in my kitchen with my keys still in one hand and opened it over the counter. Inside was a cream card with navy lettering and one of those family photo inserts people paid extra for because they wanted the moment to look official even before it happened. Sophia's graduation celebration, University of Michigan. There was a picture of her in a blue cap and gown, one hand on her hip, smiling in a way that looked more like control than joy. She had gotten taller again, or maybe just older in the face. I held the card longer than I needed to. Then I set my keys down, went to the bedroom, and opened the closet. There was a dress in the back I had not worn in months. Dark green, simple. The one Chloe had once looked at for half a second too long and said, "That color makes you look expensive." I had laughed at the time because the dress had come from a sale rack and the zipper stuck if I pulled too fast. I took it out anyway. The party was on a Saturday. By the time I got there, the backyard was already full. Somebody had strung lights from the fence to the corner of the house, even though the sun was not fully down yet. A long folding table ran along the patio with buns in plastic bags, potato salad in a white bowl, sliced tomatoes sweating on a tray, chips in 2 separate baskets because somebody in the family believed that counted as hosting. A grill smoked near the fence. Somewhere behind me, a little kid I did not know was running in circles with a hot dog bun and no hot dog. People stood around with paper plates and canned beer and the same easy voices people used at graduations, cookouts, and funerals when they wanted the event to stay on script. I closed the gate behind me. David saw me first. He was by the cooler in jeans and a short-sleeve button-down, one hand around a beer, the other already half lifted before he seemed to decide what expression should go with it. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He stepped toward me. Not warm, not cold, just correct. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me." It was the kind of exchange 2 adults could have and almost believe. Almost. He nodded once and glanced toward the patio where somebody was calling his name from near the grill. "Food's over there. Sophia's been asking if you came yet." I looked at him. He looked back just long enough for both of us to register everything we were not going to do in public. Then he said, "There's lemonade too if you're not drinking." I almost smiled. Good to know. He moved away first. I stood there for a second with a paper gift bag in one hand and the smell of charcoal and ketchup and cut grass sitting low in the evening air. Then I saw Chloe. She was near the far end of the table, talking to a woman in a denim jacket I vaguely recognized from the school pickup line life I had once stood adjacent to. Chloe had a plastic cup in her hand. Jeans, white sweater, hair down. She turned her head, saw me, and stopped for one beat too long before the smile came. I knew that smile. Not surprise, not relief exactly. Just you're here. I walked over because not walking over would have made me 17 again in all the worst ways. Hey, Chloe said. Hey. For a second, we only looked at each other. A year had done what years did. Small things. Nothing cinematic. Her face was a little different around the eyes. Mine probably was too. The closeness had gone somewhere quieter, but it had not left. How are you? She asked. Good. I lifted one shoulder. You? Good. We both let the lie sit there in peace. I handed her the gift bag, and for Sophia. You didn't have to. I know. Chloe took it and held it against her side. Her fingers brushed mine for a second on the handle. That was all. It still registered. Behind her, somebody asked where the extra mustard was. A kid screamed in delight or injury. It was hard to tell which. The grill flared once, and David said, Jesus, under his breath from across the yard. Chloe glanced that way, then back at me. You look nice, she said. The sentence was simple enough that no one nearby would have heard anything in it. My body heard too much anyway. Thanks, I said. You too. She nodded once. I'm glad you came. That one I believed. Before I could answer, Sophia came at me from the side and wrapped both arms around me, hard enough to knock the breath a little out of my chest. Hey, I said, laughing into her hair. She let go and stepped back. You actually came. You invited me? That hasn't guaranteed anything lately. Chloe made a quiet sound like a warning, but Sophia ignored it with the confidence of a 17-year-old who had spent a year getting closer to adulthood and farther from manners. You look weirdly dressed up, Sophia said to me. It's called respect. It's called trying too hard. Congratulations to you too. She grinned then, quick and real. And for a second I could still see the girl who had once covered half her face in a kitchen photo because poster board had ruined her life before first period. You want to see my dorm stuff list? She asked. It's insane. Right now? Yes, that feels aggressive. Sophia took my wrist and started pulling me toward the patio table where a stack of envelopes and a University of Michigan folder were sitting under a centerpiece that had probably seemed easier in theory than in execution. Chloe watched us go. The folder was full of things I did not understand anymore because I'd never been the kind of person who laminated a future. Meal plans, housing forms, move-in dates. Sophia talked fast, half mocking all of it while clearly caring very much. Dad says I don't need 3 desk lamps, she said. You absolutely don't. Okay, but one is ugly and one is for vibes. That's not a real category. It is at college. I smiled and let her keep going. Then, without looking up from the folder, Sophia said, I miss you. The sentence landed without warning. I looked at her. She had matured into that annoying, beautiful age where people still had teenage skin and childlike honesty, but spoke like they had already started practicing distance. You don't come over anymore, she said. I glanced past her at the yard, at Chloe laughing politely at something a guest had said, at David carrying a plate to an older relative near the fence, at the whole house standing there behind them like a decision nobody had officially announced. You're busy, I said, college and stuff. Sophia looked up at me immediately. That's not why. She didn't say it accusingly. That was what made it harder. I leaned one hand on the table and forced a small smile. You got very intense in the last year. No, I just got taller. That too. She kept looking at me. There were people all around us. A graduation banner tied between 2 fence posts. Somebody asking for ice. Someone else telling a story about campus football, as if Sophia had personally committed to joining the marching band. Still, inside the noise, there was this small exact space where a 17-year-old was waiting to see if an adult would insult her by lying too badly. I'm glad you invited me, I said. It was not an answer. It was the most honest thing I could manage in that yard. Sophia studied my face for another second. Then she nodded once, like she was accepting less than she wanted, because she had already figured out that was adulthood. Mom cried when I got into Michigan, she said, flipping the folder closed. Like, a lot. I believe that. She said it was because I was leaving. I did not say anything. Sophia looked out into the yard. I think people cry for multiple reasons. Then she picked up a soda and walked away before I could decide whether I was proud of her or afraid for her. The party kept going. That was the strange thing about pain in public. It had to share space with condiments, with a neighbor asking how work was, with a kid falling down near the grill and getting up just to do it again, with an older man in a baseball cap telling me he remembered when Sophia was this big, holding one hand somewhere near his knee, like memory had exact measurements. I took a paper plate because not eating would have been more visible than eating badly. How have you been? A woman I had met maybe twice Asked me near the potato salad. Good, good, I said. It came out automatically. She nodded as if that solved it, then launched into a story about her son's internship in Columbus. I stood there with a hamburger bun going stale on my plate and gave the right sounds in the right places. At some point, David came over to refill the ice bin and paused beside me. You want another lemonade? He asked. I'm fine. He nodded. We stood there for a moment, looking toward the yard without looking at each other. She was glad you came, he said. I knew he meant Sophia. Me too, I said. He adjusted the bag of ice in the cooler. Michigan's far. Yeah, she's excited. I can tell. David looked toward Chloe then. She was near the back step talking to Sophia now, one hand lifted as she tucked hair behind her ear while listening. A movement I knew too well and no longer had any claim to. She'll be okay, he said. I did not ask which one of them he meant. After that, the light shifted. The strings over the yard started to matter. People's faces warmed under them. Somebody put on music low enough to pretend it wasn't the reason the quiet felt less sharp. I found myself alone for a minute, by the drinks table with a fresh lemonade, sweating through the paper napkin wrapped around the cup. That was where Chloe came to stand next to me, not facing me, just beside me, looking out at her own yard like she was another guest at the edge of it. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Sophia's been impossible about packing. She seems efficient. She bought 6 different storage bins. That sounds like a cry for help. Chloe smiled. Not the old smile, not the one that used to undo me on contact. Something gentler than that. Sadder, too. A smile that had survived knowledge. She said she needed one specifically for sentimental but not displayable items, Chloe said. I looked at my cup. That's a brutal category. She gets it from me. Before I could answer, Chloe set her hand over mine. 1 second. Maybe less. No squeeze, no lingering, just skin on skin, quick and impossible to misread. Then she took it away. No one around us noticed. My whole body did. I kept looking at the lemonade, because looking at her would have been too obvious, even if no one else knew why. When I finally did turn, Chloe was already stepping back into the party. Not hurrying, not apologizing, just going. I stayed another 20 minutes because leaving too soon would have said something out loud that everybody had agreed not to hear. Then I found Sophia, gave her a real hug this time, told her Michigan was cold and she should pack better socks than she thought she needed, and listened while she informed me that she was not an idiot and knew about weather apps. Come visit me, she said. That feels like a threat. I'm serious. I know. She held onto my hand for 1 second after the hug ended. Then she let go and looked past me toward the house. Bye, Maya. It sounded older than the last time she had said my name like that. I found Chloe near the patio door. I'm heading out, I said. She nodded once. Thanks again for coming. Yeah. So many years of language and that was what was left. Thanks. Good. You too. Drive safe. See you. Maybe that was adulthood. Not wisdom, just compression. Drive safe, Chloe said anyway. I almost laughed at the familiarity of it. Instead, I nodded and went through the gate. On the drive home, I took the coastal road instead of the faster one without really deciding to. The traffic thinned after the last strip mall. Houses gave way to darker gaps. Then the turnout by the rocks came up on my right and I pulled in because I was not ready to be home and not ready for anywhere else either. The water was black from that angle. Not dramatic black, just evening on a real shoreline. The air smelled like salt, wet stone, and the cold coming up off the water after a warm day. I sat on the concrete bench near the rocks and looked out at the place where the ocean kept hitting the same edges without learning anything from it. Cars passed behind me every so often on the road above. A cyclist went by with a blinking red light clipped to the back of his helmet. Somewhere down the path, a couple was arguing softly enough that the words never reached me. I sat there. That was all. No revelation arrived. No sentence formed itself out of the dark water and handed me a wiser version of my own life. My hands got cold. The stone bench pressed through the dress at the backs of my thighs. My shoulders lowered by degrees I only noticed because they had been living too high for too long. Then my phone lit up beside me. One message. From Chloe. I opened it. Just that. A single mark on the screen. No word, no explanation, no softening around it. I smiled before I could stop myself. Not because I was happy, not exactly. The feeling was smaller and steadier than that. It felt like recognition without demand. Like somebody on the other side of a closed door knocking once just to say they were still there. I typed back, "Me too," sent it. Then I put the phone down beside me on the bench and kept looking at the water. After a while, I stood up and walked back to the car. The night air had sharpened while I was sitting there. My heels clicked once against the pavement before I kicked them off and carried them the rest of the way, one in each hand. At the car door, I stood for a second and looked back toward the rocks. I wasn't happy. That wasn't the word. I wasn't healed. or over it, or done loving her. I wasn't normal in the way I had once tried to mean it either, as if love could be measured by how easy it was to explain at dinner. I had loved someone, I had lost her. The world had not ended. It had only kept going until I learned how to go with it. Enough, I thought. The word came to me in Vietnamese before anything in English did. Not joy, not victory, not even peace exactly. Just enough. I got in the car and drove home.